What if everything you thought you knew about ancient civilizations was completely wrong? While most people believe great empires emerged from nowhere, the truth is far more fascinating. Deep within Pakistan's rugged Balochistan hills lies evidence of humanity's most remarkable transformation, a discovery so profound it rewrites the entire story of how we became civilized. 7,000 years before Christ walked the earth, something extraordinary was happening at a remote site called Mehrgarh. This wasn't just another ancient settlement, it was ground zero for one of humanity's greatest leaps forward. When French archaeologist Jean-François Jarry began digging here in the 1970s, he uncovered secrets that had been buried for millennia, secrets that would shatter our understanding of civilization itself. The earliest residents of Mehrgarh weren't living in caves or wandering endlessly across barren landscapes. Instead, they constructed rectangular mud brick homes measuring approximately 4 by 6 meter modular structures that reveal incredible foresight and planning. These weren't temporary shelters, but permanent dwellings with built-in storage compartments embedded directly into the walls. Think about what this means. These ancient people were already considering future needs, storing surplus goods and preparing for tomorrow's challenges. Walking through these reconstructed homes today, you'd notice floors made from packed earth mixed with chaff, surfaces that still bear traces of daily activities from 7 millennia ago. Blackened hearths tell stories of countless meals prepared by countless generations. Grinding stones, polished smooth through endless use, speak of communities that had mastered grain preparation. Storage pits lined with waterproof plaster demonstrate sophisticated preservation techniques that kept food safe through harsh seasons. But Mehrgarh's true significance extends far beyond impressive construction techniques. This site provides undeniable proof of humanity's pivotal transition from nomadic hunting and gathering to settled agricultural existence. The inhabitants didn't simply import farming techniques from distant lands, they independently developed agriculture right here in South Asia. Genetic analysis of ancient wheat and barley varieties confirms these crops were domesticated locally, representing an achievement that parallels similar developments occurring simultaneously in Mesopotamia and China. The agricultural sophistication at Mehrgarh is staggering. These ancient farmers cultivated 6-row barley, a variety perfectly adapted to the region's challenging climate conditions. This choice reveals deep understanding of plant breeding and environmental adaptation. Beyond cereals, they grew field peas, sesame, and dates, creating a diversified agricultural system that could support growing populations for thousands of years to come. Animal domestication evolved alongside plant cultivation in fascinating ways. Mehrgarh's residents kept goats and sheep, but more significantly, they began domesticating water buffalo and zebu cattle, mammals that would become absolutely central to Indus Valley Civilization. Archaeological evidence shows a gradual progression from hunting wild creatures to managing domestic herds. The zebu, with its distinctive humped back and remarkable heat tolerance, proved ideally suited to the subcontinent's demanding climate. These animals provided far more than just meat and milk. They supplied crucial draft power for agriculture and transportation, generating the agricultural surplus necessary for population expansion and increasing social complexity. Without this surplus, the magnificent cities that would later emerge could never have existed. Craft traditions that would eventually flourish in Harappan urban centers first took root in these Neolithic communities. Mehrgarh's artisans produced increasingly sophisticated pottery, beginning with simple hand-formed vessels, but gradually incorporating wheel-thrown techniques. The earliest ceramics were basic undecorated containers fired in open kilns, but by 5500 BC, potters were creating elaborate painted wares featuring intricate geometric designs and animal motifs. The consistency of these decorative patterns across different archaeological sites suggests something remarkable was happening. The emergence of shared cultural traditions and possibly specialized craft production. Communities separated by hundreds of kilometers were developing similar artistic styles, indicating extensive communication networks and cultural exchange. Metallurgy developed progressively but steadily throughout this period. The earliest metal artifacts from Mehrgarh date to approximately 4500 BC, consisting of small copper ornaments and tools that demonstrate advanced smelting knowledge and metalworking abilities. The copper likely originated from deposits in nearby hills, indicating developing trade networks that would eventually span the entire Indus region. Lead and bronze working followed naturally, with craftsmen learning to alloy copper with tin, creating harder and more durable implements and weapons. The geographic advantages of the greater Indus region cannot be emphasized enough when understanding this civilization's emergence. The Indus River system, fed by monsoon rains and Himalayan snowmelt, created one of Earth's most fertile alluvial plains. Unlike Mesopotamian rivers' unpredictable flooding patterns, the Indus followed relatively regular cycles, rising during summer monsoons and receding in winter, while depositing nutrient-rich silt perfect for agriculture. This predictability enabled farmers to develop sophisticated irrigation systems and plan agricultural cycles with complete confidence. The river system provided numerous advantages beyond fertile soil. The Indus and its tributaries functioned as natural highways for trade and communication, connecting communities across vast distances. River fish supplemented agricultural diets, while reeds and aquatic plants supplied materials for basketry and construction. Rivers also provided essential clay for pottery and brick-making, resources that became hallmarks of Harappan material culture. Climate conditions during this formative period were considerably more favorable than today's environment. Paleoclimatic evidence indicates the region received substantially greater rainfall, supporting extensive forests and grasslands that sustained larger populations and more diverse ecosystems. These conditions provided abundant wild resources to supplement agricultural production. Interestingly, gradual aridification beginning around 4000 BC may have actually encouraged innovation, forcing communities to develop more efficient agricultural techniques and stronger trade networks for securing essential resources. This remarkable transformation didn't happen overnight. Over more than a millennium, simple farming villages gradually evolved into proto-urban centers, setting the stage for one of humanity's greatest civilizations. The foundations laid at Mehrgarh would eventually support cities that rivaled anything in the ancient world, complete with sophisticated drainage systems, standardized weights and measures, and trade networks stretching from Afghanistan to Gujarat. The uniformity of these organizational systems spanning hundreds of kilometers reveals either centralized governance or extraordinarily effective cultural knowledge sharing. During this proto-urban phase, technological breakthroughs accelerated at an unprecedented pace. Potter's wheels became commonplace throughout the region, facilitating mass production of uniform vessels that maintained consistent quality standards. Kilns expanded in both size and complexity, achieving elevated temperatures essential for creating harder ceramics and extracting metals from raw ores. The potter's wheel innovation sparked additional technological advances as craftsmen applied rotary motion principles to various other disciplines, potentially including early transportation mechanisms. This cross-pollination of ideas demonstrates how a single breakthrough could trigger cascading improvements across multiple industries, fundamentally altering how communities approach manufacturing and production. Water buffalo domestication proved exceptionally crucial for regional advancement. These robust animals, perfectly adapted to swampy environments, could labor effectively in waterlogged fields where ordinary cattle would struggle tremendously. Their capacity to drag heavy plows through saturated soil unlocked previously unusable agricultural land, exponentially expanding farming possibilities. Beyond fieldwork, water buffalo supplied nutrient-rich milk, durable leather, and eventually became integral to regional transportation systems, capable of hauling substantial loads across challenging landscapes. By 3000 BC, craft specialization achieved remarkable new heights of excellence. Bead artisans perfected techniques for boring microscopic holes through extremely hard stones, including carnelian and agate, producing items that became synonymous with Indus Valley expertise. The precision demanded by such intricate work indicates full-time specialists who dedicated years to mastering their craft. Simultaneously, metalworkers conquered lost wax casting methods, enabling creation of complex bronze artifacts including implements, weaponry, and ornamental pieces that displayed extraordinary artistic skill. The appearance of proto-writing systems during this era remains debatable, yet fascinating. Hautori from later Kot Diji archaeological layers displays symbols that potentially represent early attempts at symbolic communication. While these markings don't constitute genuine writing, They suggest increasing requirements for record keeping and information exchange that would eventually evolve into the mysterious Indus script. The standardization of these symbols across distant sites implies shared conventions and possibly unified authority structures. Religious and ceremonial practices developed alongside increasing social complexity. Figurines depicting feminine forms, likely representing fertility deities, became more prevalent and standardized throughout the region. Fire altars emerged at numerous locations, indicating shared ritual practices centered on flame worship. The appearance of ceremonial bathing facilities at certain settlements foreshadowed the magnificent baths that would become defining features of Harappan urban centers. Urban planning concepts began materializing in larger settlements during this transitional period. Sites like Mohenjo-daro exhibited evidence of grid-pattern street arrangements with major thoroughfares oriented north-south and east-west. Drainage systems, initially basic but progressively more sophisticated, managed sewage and stormwater runoff effectively. These innovations demanded community cooperation and potentially centralized coordination, representing vital steps toward the urban excellence that would characterize fully developed Harappan cities. The millennium spanning 3300 to 2600 BC witnessed the Indus region's transformation from scattered farming communities into interconnected networks of increasingly complex settlements positioned on the threshold of complete urbanization. The groundwork established during these centuries centered around cultural abundance, craft specialization, trading networks, technological innovation, and social structure would support one of antiquity's most extraordinary civilizations. The metamorphosis that swept across the Indus Valley between 2600 and 2500 BC constitutes one of history's most spectacular episodes of urban development. Within merely 1 century, the dispersed proto-urban settlements that had evolved over millennia suddenly crystallized into enormous, meticulously designed cities that would surpass most contemporary urban centers globally. This urban revolution transcended mere scale, representing unprecedented sophistication in city planning, engineering excellence, and social coordination. Harappa's emergence marked the commencement of this urban transformation. Positioned in Punjab's fertile region within present-day Pakistan, Harappa expanded from a modest settlement into a sprawling metropolis encompassing over 150 hectares. Archaeological investigations by Mortimer Wheeler during the 1940s, followed by subsequent work from Pakistani and international research teams, unveiled a city constructed according to principles that wouldn't resurface until Roman imperial times. The settlement's strategic location along the Ravi River provided access to both productive agricultural territories and major commercial routes linking Afghanistan's mountainous regions with Arabian Sea coastal areas. Harappa's urban blueprint reflected deliberate planning on a scale previously unseen throughout South Asia. The city divided into distinct zones, featuring a raised citadel mound westward and a lower residential area eastward. This citadel, measuring approximately 460 by 215 meters, rose nearly 15 meters above the surrounding plains, while being encircled by massive defensive walls built from fired bricks. These fortifications, with sections reaching 6 meters in thickness, incorporated sophisticated architectural elements including projecting bastions, strategic salients, and carefully engineered gateways that regulated access to the upper city. Harappa's lower town demonstrated even more extraordinary urban planning principles. Streets followed perfect cardinal directions, establishing a grid system where main thoroughfares measured up to 10 meters in width. These primary arteries intersected perpendicularly with secondary roads approximately 5 meters wide, which connected to narrow lanes barely 2 meters across, providing access to individual residential blocks. The consistency of this grid pattern throughout the entire settlement indicates centralized planning authority, capable of implementing and maintaining urban design standards across expansive areas. This level of coordination required sophisticated administrative systems and demonstrates remarkable organizational capabilities that rival modern city planning departments. Mohenjo-daro, situated in Sindari province, approximately 600 kilometers southwest of Harappa, emerged as perhaps the most spectacular example of Indus Valley urban planning excellence. The site's modern designation, meaning Mound of the Dead, contradicts the vibrant metropolis that once accommodated an estimated 40,000 inhabitants. Like Harappa, Mohenjo-daro featured the characteristic division between citadel and lower town, but its superior preservation allows more detailed analysis of Harappan urban design principles. The citadel at Mohenjo-daro contains some of antiquity's most impressive public architecture. The Great Bath, a rectangular pool measuring 12 by 7 meters and 2.4 meters deep, was constructed using precisely fitted fired bricks and sealed with bitumen to prevent water seepage. Steps at both ends provided pool access, while a sophisticated drainage system enabled controlled filling and emptying procedures. Surrounding the bath were colonnaded galleries, private chambers, and what appears to have been a substantial assembly hall, suggesting this complex served crucial public functions, possibly relating to ritual purification or community assemblies. Adjacent to the Great Bath stood a massive granary complex featuring parallel halls with thick walls designed to protect stored grain from moisture and pest infiltration. Ventilation channels integrated into flooring allowed air circulation, preventing spoilage, while loading platforms facilitated movement of heavy grain containers. The granary's capacity, estimated at over 1,600 cubic meters, could store sufficient grain to feed thousands of people for extended periods, indicating centralized control over food distribution systems that ensured community survival during challenging times. Mohenjo-daro's lower town displayed residential architecture that emphasized privacy, sanitation, and comfort above all else. Dwellings built predominantly from fired brick typically presented blank exterior walls towards streets, with all windows and entrances opening exclusively onto interior courtyards. This ingenious design shielded inhabitants from dust storms, street noise, and the Indus Valley's scorching heat while preserving family seclusion from public view. Most residences contained multiple chambers organized around central courtyards, incorporating separate zones for food preparation, storage facilities, and sleeping quarters. The advanced nature of Harappan drainage infrastructure exceeded anything witnessed in the ancient world until Roman engineering achievements. Every residence in Mohenjo-daro connected to an extensive sewage network that transported wastewater through covered channels running beneath street surfaces. These underground channels, constructed from precisely fitted bricks and mortar, maintained consistent slopes, ensuring proper water flow throughout the system. At regular intervals, manholes enabled access for maintenance procedures, while settling tanks and collection sumps filtered solid waste before allowing water to continue downstream. This level of urban sanitation wouldn't be matched again for thousands of years. The standardization of brick manufacturing across Harappan cities demonstrates extraordinary consistency in production methods and construction techniques. Bricks adhered to exact proportional relationships, with the most prevalent ratio being 4:1 for length, width, and thickness measurements. This standardization transcended mere convenience, revealing centralized oversight of construction materials and building methods. The uniformity of brick dimensions across settlements separated by hundreds of kilometers suggests either direct administrative coordination or universally accepted technical standards that governed construction practices throughout the civilization. Such consistency required sophisticated quality control mechanisms and demonstrates the civilization's remarkable organizational capabilities. Delavira, positioned on Kadir Island within Gujarat's Rann of Kutch, exemplified Harappan adaptability to harsh environmental challenges. This metropolis, spanning nearly 100 hectares, flourished in one of the region's most arid zones, necessitating revolutionary water management strategies that pushed engineering boundaries. The inhabitants engineered an elaborate network of reservoirs, dams, and distribution channels that captured and preserved monsoon rainfall for year-round consumption. 16 massive reservoirs, some excavated directly from solid rock while others constructed using enormous stone walls, could store millions of liters during brief rainy seasons. Delavira's water management infrastructure incorporated sophisticated features including spillways, sluice gates, and distribution channels that regulated water flow throughout the urban area. The primary reservoir, stretching over 70 meters in length, was lined with precisely cut stone blocks and featured stepped access points allowing water collection at varying levels. This engineering marvel enabled a thriving urban center in environments where water scarcity would typically prevent large-scale habitation. Kalibangan, situated along the now dry Gaga River in Rajasthan, provided crucial insights into Harappan agricultural methods and urban development throughout the civilization's eastern territories. The settlement featured the characteristic citadel and lower town division, while revealing evidence of extensive agricultural fields with furrow marks still preserved in archaeological layers. These furrows running in perpendicular directions indicate sophisticated understanding of crop rotation and soil management techniques that maximized agricultural output. Such advanced farming methods enabled surplus production necessary for supporting large urban populations and extensive trade networks that connected distant regions. The development of the Indus script during this period represented a quantum leap in administrative and commercial sophistication. While the writing system remains undeciphered, its widespread usage across Harappan sites indicates a standardized communication method that facilitated complex transactions and record-keeping. The script appears on seals, pottery vessels, copper tablets, and various other objects, suggesting multiple applications including trade identification, administrative documentation, and possibly religious or ceremonial purposes. This versatility demonstrates the script's integral role in daily life and commercial activities throughout the civilization. Harappan seals, typically measuring 2 to 3 centimeters square, were masterfully carved from steatite and featured intricate designs combining script symbols with detailed animal representations. The most frequently depicted creatures include the mystical unicorn, majestic elephant, powerful tiger, and domesticated water buffalo. These seals likely functioned as identification markers for merchants or officials, with each unique combination of symbols and imagery representing specific individuals or commercial organizations. The discovery of identical seals at locations separated by vast distances confirms extensive trade networks and standardized commercial practices that connected the entire civilization. Such consistency required sophisticated administrative systems and demonstrates remarkable organizational capabilities that facilitated long-distance commerce. Standardization of weights and measures achieved unprecedented precision during this urban phase of development. Harappan weights, characteristically cube-shaped and manufactured from precisely cut stone, followed both binary and decimal mathematical systems simultaneously. The fundamental unit weighed approximately 13.7 grams, with larger denominations following multiples of 16. This sophisticated mathematical framework enabled accurate measurement throughout the entire civilization, facilitating long-distance commerce and ensuring fairness in commercial transactions across cultural boundaries. The precision of Harappan weights remains remarkable by contemporary standards, with modern analysis revealing variations of less than 1% between weights of identical denominations discovered at different archaeological sites. This extraordinary consistency indicates either centralized manufacturing facilities or extremely rigorous quality control standards that maintained uniformity across the civilization. The standardization extended to linear measurements as well, with a standard unit of approximately 33.5 centimeters appearing in architectural proportions throughout multiple cities. Social stratification became increasingly apparent through housing variations and craft specialization patterns observable in archaeological evidence. In Mohenjo-daro, residences ranged from modest single-room dwellings to elaborate multi-story mansions containing dozens of chambers. The largest homes featured private wells, sophisticated drainage systems, and separate quarters for servants or specialized workers. These dramatic variations in housing quality suggest significant differences in wealth accumulation and social status within Harappan society. However, the absence of truly monumental architecture indicates that social hierarchies remained relatively modest compared to contemporary civilizations in Mesopotamia or Egypt, where massive pyramids and ziggurats dominated urban landscapes. Craft workshops clustered in specific neighborhoods, indicating professional specialization and possibly guild-like organization that regulated production standards and training procedures. Bead-making workshops at Mohenjo-daro contained thousands of finished and partially completed beads alongside specialized tools for drilling, cutting, and polishing operations. The precision required for creating microscopic holes through extremely hard stones like carnelian demanded years of apprenticeship and full-time dedication to the craft. Similarly, bronze working areas featured furnaces, crucibles, and molds for producing tools, weapons, and decorative objects that met exacting quality standards. The apparent absence of monumental religious architecture distinguishes Harappan cities from their Mesopotamian and Egyptian counterparts, where massive temples and ceremonial complexes dominated urban centers. While fire altars and ritual bathing facilities suggest active religious practices, no structures comparable to ziggurats or pyramids have been identified in Harappan contexts. This absence may reflect different religious traditions, more egalitarian social structures, or simply archaeological preservation challenges that have obscured such monuments. The lack of obvious temples or palaces suggests that Harappan society, while clearly stratified, maintained less rigid hierarchical structures than other contemporary civilizations. Trade networks expanded dramatically during this urban phase, connecting Harappan cities with regions as distant as Central Asia, Mesopotamia, and peninsular India through sophisticated commercial relationships. Harappan seals and artifacts have been discovered at Mesopotamian sites including Ur and Babylon, while Mesopotamian objects appear regularly in Harappan archaeological contexts. This extensive commerce involved luxury goods like lapis lazuli and gold, alongside bulk commodities including timber, metals, and agricultural products that sustained urban populations. The organization required for these vast trade networks indicates sophisticated commercial institutions capable of coordinating complex transactions across cultural and linguistic boundaries. The existence of apparent warehouses and commercial centers at major settlements indicates organized storage and distribution networks capable of managing enormous volumes of merchandise efficiently. During this remarkable period, manufacturing techniques achieved unprecedented levels of excellence and innovation that set new standards for craftsmanship worldwide. Harappan artisans mastered faience production, a glazed ceramic material demanding precise temperature regulation and advanced chemical understanding. This lustrous, glass-like material required coordinated firing processes and specialized knowledge of mineral compositions that few civilizations possessed. The ability to consistently produce high-quality faience demonstrates sophisticated technological capabilities and standardized training methods. Bronze working evolved far beyond simple implement production to encompass complex artistic castings exemplified by the renowned dancing girl figurine, discovered at Mohenjo-daro. This masterpiece showcases extraordinary artistic vision and technical mastery of lost wax casting processes that required years of specialized training. The figurine's graceful proportions, intricate details, and flawless execution represent pinnacles of ancient metallurgical achievement. Textile manufacturing, though poorly preserved in archaeological contexts, appears extraordinarily developed based on circumstantial evidence discovered throughout Harappan sites. Spindle whorls, loom weights, and dye vats found at numerous locations suggest large-scale cloth production that supplied both domestic consumption and export markets. The presence of cotton seeds at Mehrgarh indicates that the Indus Valley pioneered cotton cultivation and processing into textiles, massed an innovation carrying tremendous economic implications for international commerce. This agricultural breakthrough positioned Harappan merchants advantageously in luxury textile markets throughout the ancient world. The urban revolution spanning 2600 to 2500 BC transformed the Indus Valley from scattered agricultural communities into a unified civilization characterized by unprecedented urban planning excellence, technological sophistication, and commercial integration. These achievements in city design, engineering innovation, and social coordination established foundations supporting Harappan civilization for the subsequent 5 centuries, creating antiquity's most remarkable urban society. The prosperity-sustaining Harappan civilization for 6 centuries rested fundamentally on economic foundations, unlike anything previously witnessed in the ancient world. By 2500 BC, the magnificent cities established during the urban revolution had evolved into nodes of vast commercial networks stretching from Badakhshan's lapis lazuli mines in Afghanistan to Gujarat's coastal pearl beds. This transformation from regional urban centers to international trading hubs marked the beginning of the Harappan Golden Age, when standardized production methods, sophisticated logistics, and rigorous quality control systems enabled Indus Valley merchants to compete successfully in markets throughout the known world. Archaeological evidence from Lothal, a Harappan port city in Gujarat, reveals the extraordinary scope of this commercial enterprise. The settlement, covering 285 hectares along the Biogavo River, featured what may constitute the world's oldest known artificial dock erect, a rectangular basin measuring 214 by 37 meters, constructed with precisely fitted fired bricks. The dock's ingenious design incorporated sophisticated lock systems allowing ships to enter during high tide while remaining safely harbored when water levels dropped. Sluice gates controlled water flow while spillways prevented overflow during monsoon deluges. The engineering precision required for this construction demonstrates advanced hydraulic knowledge. Lothal's dock connected to extensive networks of warehouses, workshops, and residential areas supporting thriving port communities. Excavations revealed evidence of bead-making facilities processing raw materials from across the subcontinent and beyond. Carnelian from Gujarat, agate from Maharashtra, lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, and turquoise from Iran were transformed into finished products that archaeological evidence suggests were exported throughout Persian Gulf regions. The production scale was truly remarkable. Individual workshop areas contained over 4,000 finished beads, plus thousands more in various completion stages. The technical sophistication of harp bead manufacturing surpassed contemporary production anywhere globally. Craftsmen had mastered drilling perfectly cylindrical holes through stones reaching 7 on the Mohs hardness scale, using bronze-tipped drills rotated by bow-driven mechanisms. The precision achieved was extraordinary by any standard. Holes barely 1 millimeter in diameter maintained consistent width and perfect straightness through beads, extending several centimeters in length. This technical mastery level required individual skill plus standardized training methods and quality control systems ensuring consistent output across multiple workshops throughout the civilization. Harappan merchants established trading outposts and colonies throughout their commercial sphere, creating interconnected settlement networks facilitating long-distance exchange operations. At Shortagai in northern Afghanistan, excavators discovered a complete Harappan settlement featuring characteristic urban planning, standardized brick construction, and typical Harappan material culture. Located strategically near lapis lazuli sources, this outpost served as collection and processing centers for one of the ancient world's most valuable commodities. The presence of Harappan seals, standardized weights, and distinctive pottery at the site indicates direct administrative control rather than merely commercial relationships with local populations. Similar Harappan settlements appeared along trade routes throughout Balochistan and into Central Asia. At Sutkagan near the modern Pakistan-Iran border, excavations revealed a fortified Harappan outpost controlling access to the Makran coast. The site's strategic position enabled monitoring of maritime traffic while providing secure storage for goods awaiting transshipment to distant markets. The standardized architecture and material culture discovered at these remote settlements demonstrates the extent to which Harappan commercial practices had spread beyond the Indus Valley proper, creating a truly international trading empire that influenced cultures across vast geographical areas. The relationship between Harappan merchants and Mesopotamian civilization provides the clearest evidence of international trade connections that spanned continents. Mesopotamian texts from the Akkadian period reference a land called Meluha, which scholars identify with the Indus Valley based on descriptions of products and trading practices documented in cuneiform records. These ancient texts ascribe Meluhan merchants as suppliers of exotic goods including ivory, precious stones, gold, and possibly cotton textiles that were highly prized in Mesopotamian markets. The presence of Harappan seals at Mesopotamian sites including Kish and Susa confirms active trade relationships persisting for centuries across cultural boundaries. At Diawar, excavations in the Royal Cemetery revealed Harappan carnelian beads in elite burials dating to approximately 2500 BC, indicating that Indus Valley products had achieved luxury status in Mesopotamian society. The technical quality of these beads, with their perfectly drilled holes and lustrous surfaces, apparently commanded premium prices in foreign markets throughout the region. Mesopotamian records suggest that Harappan merchants maintained permanent trading stations in major cities, facilitating regular commercial exchange and cultural contact that enriched both civilizations. These permanent establishments required sophisticated diplomatic arrangements and legal frameworks protecting merchant interests across international boundaries. The standardization characterizing Harappan urban planning extended throughout their economic system, creating quality assurance mechanisms supporting their international reputation for excellence. Pottery production exemplified this systematic approach to manufacturing that became a hallmark of Harappan commercial success. Harappan ceramics followed consistent forms, decorative patterns, and technical specifications across hundreds of sites spanning nearly 1 million square kilometers. The famous Harappan storage jars, with their distinctive pointed bases and narrow necks, maintained virtually identical proportions whether discovered at Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, or distant trading posts throughout their commercial network. This consistency wasn't accidental but reflected deliberate standardization policies that ensured product quality and facilitated recognition of genuine Harappan goods in international markets. Such systematic approaches to manufacturing quality control wouldn't be seen again until Industrial Revolution developments thousands of years later. The economic success of Harappan civilization rested on innovative approaches to production, distribution, and quality control that enabled them to dominate international markets for centuries. Their achievements in commercial organization, manufacturing excellence, and international trade established standards that influenced economic development throughout the ancient world and created prosperity supporting one of humanity's most remarkable urban civilizations. This comprehensive standardization demanded sophisticated organizational frameworks that coordinated manufacturing across enormous distances and diverse geographical regions. Archaeological discoveries suggest master craftsmen journeyed between settlements, educating local artisans while ensuring strict adherence to established quality standards. The remarkable consistency of decorative motifs, technical specifications, and excellence levels indicates centralized oversight of production standards, potentially enforced through guild-like organizations or direct administrative supervision. Metallurgy represented another domain where Harappan craftsmen achieved exceptional standardization and technical mastery that surpassed contemporary civilizations. Bronze manufacturing followed consistent alloy ratios, with copper-tin compositions typically ranging between 88 to 92% copper and 8 to 12% tin content. This precise standardization wasn't coincidental, but deliberately produced bronze with optimal properties for specific applications. Tools demanded harder alloys containing elevated tin percentages, while decorative objects utilized softer compositions that were easier to manipulate yet maintained attractive appearances. Such specialized knowledge demonstrates sophisticated understanding of metallurgical principles that wouldn't be matched elsewhere for centuries. The magnitude of Harappan metal production was truly substantial. At Harappa itself, excavations uncovered extensive copper working areas featuring furnaces, crucibles, and massive slag heaps, indicating large-scale smelting operations that processed enormous quantities of raw materials. Raw copper likely originated from mines in Rajasthan and Balochistan, while tin sources remain uncertain but probably included deposits in Afghanistan or Central Asia. The logistics required to transport these raw materials, process them into standardized alloys, and distribute finished products throughout the civilization demonstrate sophisticated supply chain management capabilities that coordinated complex operations across vast territories. Such coordination required advanced planning, reliable communication systems, and efficient transportation networks that connected distant resource centers with manufacturing facilities. Textile manufacturing, though poorly preserved in archaeological contexts, appears to have constituted a major component of Harappan commerce that generated substantial wealth. Cotton cultivation, first developed in the Indus Valley region, provided raw materials for what may have been the world's first large-scale textile industry capable of producing goods for international export markets. Spindles discovered at numerous sites display remarkable consistency in size and weight, suggesting standardized thread production methods that ensured uniform quality across different manufacturing centers. The presence of dye vats and mordanting facilities at several locations indicates that Harappan textiles incorporated sophisticated coloring techniques that would have significantly enhanced their value in competitive international markets. Evidence for textile exports comes primarily from Mesopotamian sources describing fine fabrics from Meloa that commanded premium prices among elite consumers throughout the region. The absence of significant textile remains in Harappan archaeological contexts may actually support the export hypothesis, as high-quality cloth would have been too valuable to discard casually in domestic contexts. The technical knowledge required for cotton cultivation, processing, spinning, weaving, and dyeing suggests a highly developed industry employing specialized workers and sophisticated production methods that required years of training and experience. This level of specialization enabled Harappan textile producers to create products that commanded premium prices in international markets. The administrative systems coordinating this vast commercial enterprise remain partially mysterious due to the undeciphered Indus script, but archaeological evidence provides crucial insights into their remarkable sophistication. The standardized weights and measures characterizing Harappan civilization extended beyond simple trade facilitation to encompass comprehensive systems of quality control, inventory management, and commercial regulation. Seals functioned not only as identification markers, but also as guarantees of quality and authenticity that protected both merchants and consumers from fraudulent products. This certification system maintained trust in commercial relationships and supported the premium pricing that Harappan goods commanded in international markets. The binary and decimal weight systems employed throughout Harappan territory demonstrate mathematical sophistication that facilitated complex commercial calculations and international trade. Merchants could easily convert between different denominations and calculate quantities for bulk transactions involving multiple parties and currencies. The precision of these weights, with variations of less than 1% between examples found at different sites, indicates manufacturing standards that wouldn't be matched until much later periods in world history. Such consistency required centralized production facilities and rigorous quality control procedures that maintained uniformity across the entire civilization. Storage and distribution systems achieved remarkable levels of organization during this prosperous period. The magnificent granaries at Harappa and Mohenjo-daro were complemented by smaller storage facilities at numerous sites throughout the civilization, creating comprehensive networks for commodity management and distribution. These warehouses featured sophisticated ventilation systems, moisture control measures, and security arrangements that protected valuable commodities from spoilage and theft, while maintaining quality during extended storage periods. The standardized design of storage facilities suggests centralized planning and possibly coordinated management across multiple locations throughout the empire. Archaeological evidence from Dhulavira reveals additional aspects of Harappan commercial organization that demonstrate advanced understanding of market management. The site featured what appears to have been a designated marketplace area with standardized stall foundations and associated storage facilities designed for efficient commercial operations. The layout suggests regulated commercial activity with designated spaces for different types of merchants or product categories. The presence of public scales and measuring devices indicates official oversight of commercial transactions, ensuring fair dealing and maintaining the sterling reputation of Harappan merchants in competitive markets. The diversity of goods flowing through Harappan trade networks was extraordinary for the ancient world and demonstrated their commercial reach across vast territories. Archaeological discoveries include materials and finished products from virtually every region of South Asia, plus many areas beyond traditional boundaries. Gold from Karnataka, silver from Afghanistan, copper from Rajasthan, tin from unknown sources, ivory from Gujarat forests, pearls from coastal waters, and precious stones from multiple locations, all moved through Harappan commercial channels. This diversity required sophisticated logistics systems capable of coordinating multiple supply chains and managing complex inventories across cultural and linguistic boundaries. Manufacturing centers specialized in processing these diverse raw materials into finished products for both domestic consumption and lucrative export markets. At Mohenjo-daro, excavations revealed extensive workshops producing seals, beads, pottery, and metal objects using advanced production techniques. The organization of these workshops suggests assembly line production methods with different craftsmen specializing in specific stages of the manufacturing process. This division of labor increased efficiency and quality while reducing production costs, providing Harappan merchants with competitive advantages in international markets where they competed against products from other civilizations. The technical innovations supporting this commercial expansion included significant advances in transportation, communication, and production technology that revolutionized how goods moved across vast distances. Harappan merchants developed standardized containers for bulk goods, wheeled carts for overland transport, and boats capable of navigating both rivers and challenging coastal waters. The uniformity of cartwheel dimensions found at multiple sites suggests standardized axle widths that allowed interchangeable parts and simplified maintenance during long-distance journeys through difficult terrain. Such standardization reduced transportation costs and improved reliability for merchant expeditions. Quality control systems extended beyond standardized weights and measures to encompass comprehensive testing and certification procedures that maintained Harappa's reputation for excellence. Archaeological evidence suggests that finished products underwent rigorous inspection before distribution, with substandard items rejected or recycled rather than reaching consumers. This systematic approach to quality assurance maintained the premium reputation of Harappan products in competitive international markets and supported premium pricing for superior craftsmanship that distinguished their goods from competitors throughout the known world. The economic prosperity generated by this sophisticated commercial system supported not only the great cities, but also hundreds of smaller settlements throughout Harappan territory, creating an integrated economic network of unprecedented scale. Archaeological surveys have identified over 1,400 Harappan sites ranging from major urban centers to small farming villages and specialized production centers. This settlement hierarchy indicates a sophisticated economic system coordinating production, processing, and distribution across multiple organizational levels. Regional specialization became increasingly pronounced during this period, with different areas focusing on particular products or production stages that maximize their natural advantages. The Cholistan region specialized in agricultural production, Gujarat concentrated on maritime trade and bead manufacturing, Bialkistan focused on mineral extraction and processing, while the core Indus cities served as administrative and commercial centers coordinating the entire integrated system across vast territories. The economic prosperity sustaining Harappan civilization created a society whose social organization continues to perplex archaeologists and historians worldwide. Unlike their contemporaries in Mesopotamia and Egypt, where imposing monumental architecture and elaborate royal burials clearly outlined rigid hierarchical structures, Harappan society presents a far more mysterious picture that challenges conventional assumptions about ancient urban civilizations. The archaeological evidence suggests a civilization that achieved extraordinary coordination and standardization without the extreme social stratification typically associated with early urban societies. This unique characteristic sets the Harappan civilization apart from virtually every other ancient culture and raises fascinating questions about alternative forms of social organization in the distant past. Housing patterns across Harappan cities reveal a society with meaningful but not extreme social differentiation that maintained remarkable balance between individual prosperity and community welfare. And Mohenjo-daro, residential architecture ranged from modest single-room dwellings measuring barely 3 by 4 meters to elaborate multi-story mansions covering over 200 square meters of floor space. The largest residences, such as the so-called Priest King's House, featured dozens of chambers arranged around multiple courtyards, private wells, sophisticated drainage connections, and separate quarters that may have accommodated servants or extended family members. These mansions incorporated architectural refinements including decorated doorways, ornamental brickwork, and carefully planned ventilation systems that provided comfort during the region's intense summer heat. However, the contrast between wealthy and modest housing was far less dramatic than in contemporary civilizations throughout the ancient world. Even the smallest Harappan dwellings typically included private courtyards, access to the municipal drainage system, and standardized brick construction that maintained dignity and functionality for all residents. The ubiquity of private wells throughout Harappan cities meant that even modest households enjoyed access to clean water, a luxury reserved exclusively for elites in many ancient societies. This relative equality in basic amenities suggests either strong social cohesion or highly effective municipal governance that ensured minimum living standards for all residents, regardless of economic status. The standardization of household artifacts across different social levels provides additional compelling evidence for a relatively egalitarian society that shared prosperity more equitably than other civilizations. Pottery, tools, and personal ornaments found in modest dwellings often matched the quality and style of those recovered from wealthy residences throughout Harappan cities. The famous Harappan storage jars with their distinctive forms and decorative patterns appeared in households throughout the social spectrum, suggesting that even luxury goods were accessible to middle-class families rather than being restricted to wealthy elites. This distribution pattern contrasts sharply with contemporary civilizations where elite goods were strictly reserved for the upper classes and served as markers of social status. Burial practices at Harappan sites reinforced the impression of limited social stratification that characterized this remarkable civilization. The cemetery at Harappa contained graves with varying quantities of burial goods, but none approached the lavish displays found in Mesopotamian royal tombs or Egyptian pyramids that celebrated extreme wealth and power. The richest Harappan burials included pottery vessels, bronze mirrors, shell bangles, and occasional gold or silver ornaments, but these grave goods represented modest wealth rather than extreme luxury that would distinguish royalty from commoners. More significantly, the burial positions and treatment of bodies showed remarkable consistency across social levels, suggesting shared religious beliefs and cultural practices that transcended economic differences. The absence of obvious royal or priestly burials has led some scholars to propose that Harappan society was governed by merchant guilds or republican institutions, rather than monarchical dynasties that dominated other ancient civilizations. This hypothesis gained support from the apparent lack of monumental palaces or temples that typically housed ancient rulers and served as symbols of their divine authority. The largest public buildings at Harappan sites, such as the Great Bath at Mohenjo-daro and the granaries at multiple cities, served community functions rather than glorifying individual rulers or demonstrating their power over subjects. This emphasis on collective benefit rather than personal aggrandizement suggests fundamentally different approaches to governance and social organization. Analysis of skeletal remains from Harappan cemeteries reveals additional fascinating insights into social organization and daily life that paint a picture of relatively prosperous communities. The population showed relatively good health and nutrition, with average heights comparable to modern South Asian populations, a remarkable achievement for an ancient civilization. Evidence of healed fractures and dental work suggests access to medical care across social levels, indicating that healthcare wasn't restricted to wealthy elites, but was available to ordinary citizens. However, some individuals showed signs of occupational stress, including repetitive strain injuries in the hands and wrists of craftsmen and spinal problems in laborers who carried heavy loads. These patterns indicate specialized occupations and division of labor, but also suggest that even manual workers enjoyed sufficient nutrition and healthcare to live productive lives rather than being exploited or neglected by ruling classes. Religious and ritual practices in Harappan civilization must be reconstructed entirely from archaeological evidence, as the undeciphered script provides no textual insights into beliefs and ceremonies that guided daily life. This limitation makes religious interpretation challenging, but also allows for fascinating speculation about spiritual practices that may have differed significantly from other ancient traditions. The most famous religious artifact, the limestone sculpture dubbed the Priest King found at Mohenjo-daro, depicts a bearded figure wearing a trefoil-patterned robe and an elaborate headband. The figure's half-closed eyes and serene expression suggest meditation or spiritual contemplation, while the sophisticated carving technique demonstrates the high artistic standards achieved by Harappan sculptors. The Priest King statue measures 17.5 centimeters in height and was carved from a single piece of steatite, then covered with lime paste and painted with remarkable attention to detail. The trefoil pattern on the robe, filled with red pigment, may represent a sacred symbol, while the headband incorporates a circular ornament that could signify religious or political authority. The figure's carefully groomed beard and mustache, along with precise rendering of facial features, suggest portraiture of a specific individual rather than a generic representation of divine or royal authority. The absence of obvious royal regalia, however, makes the figure's exact role uncertain and adds to the mystery surrounding Harappan governance structures. Ritual bathing appears to have played a central role in Harappan religious practice, as evidenced by the Great Bath at Mohenjo-daro and similar facilities at other sites throughout the civilization. The Great Bath's construction incorporated sophisticated waterproofing techniques using bitumen and gypsum mortar that prevented leakage over centuries of use. The surrounding galleries and chambers suggest ceremonial processions or gatherings that brought communities together for shared religious experiences. The pool's impressive dimensions and the precision of its construction indicate that ritual bathing was sufficiently important to justify major public investment and skilled engineering expertise. Smaller bathing facilities appeared throughout Harappan cities, suggesting that ritual purification was practiced at both community and household levels, rather than being restricted to elite ceremonies. Many private residences included dedicated bathing areas with carefully constructed drains that connected to the municipal sewage system, demonstrating the integration of religious practices with urban infrastructure. The emphasis on cleanliness and water management in Harappan urban planning may reflect religious beliefs about purity and pollution that would later become central to South Asian religious traditions. This connection suggests continuity between Harappan spiritual practices and later developments in Indian religious thought. Fire altars discovered at multiple Harappan sites provide evidence for another important ritual practice that involved community gatherings and offerings to deities or spiritual forces. These installations, typically constructed of fired brick and featuring central fire pits surrounded by offering areas, suggest ceremonies involving burnt offerings that brought communities together for shared worship. At Kalibangan, excavators found a series of fire altars on the citadel mound arranged in rows and associated with bathing platforms and wells. The standardized construction of these altars across different sites indicates shared ritual practices and possibly centralized religious authority that coordinated spiritual activities throughout the civilization. The altars contained ash and charcoal deposits along with fragments of pottery and animal bones, suggesting offerings of food and drink to deities or ancestors that honored spiritual relationships. The presence of terracotta cakes, possibly representing bread or other baked goods, indicates that grain products played important roles in religious ceremonies. These practices may represent early forms of fire worship that would later become prominent in Vedic religion, suggesting possible continuity between Harappan spiritual traditions and later South Asian religious developments that influence millions of people for millennia to come. Though direct connections remain speculative, fertility symbolism pervaded Harappan material culture extensively, suggesting religious beliefs centered on agricultural prosperity and human reproduction that governed many aspects of daily spiritual life. Terracotta figurines depicting women with elaborate headdresses and jewelry appear at archaeological sites throughout the civilization, representing one of the most consistent artistic traditions across the entire Harappan world. These figures, often displaying exaggerated feminine characteristics, likely represented mother goddesses or fertility deities who protected crops, ensured successful births, and maintained community prosperity. The consistency of their iconography across vast distances suggests shared religious beliefs and possibly organized worship practices that unified diverse communities under common spiritual frameworks. Male fertility symbols also appeared prominently in Harappan art, including the famous dancing girl bronze figurine from Mohenjo-daro and numerous phallic stones found at various sites throughout the civilization. The dancing girl, measuring 10.5 centimeters in height, depicts a nude female figure with one arm positioned confidently on her hip, while the other displays elaborate bangles that demonstrate sophisticated metalworking techniques. The figure's assured pose and ornate jewelry suggest elevated social status, while the technical mastery required for lost wax casting demonstrates sophisticated metallurgical skills that few ancient civilizations possessed. This remarkable artifact represents not only artistic achievement but also reveals attitudes toward human sexuality and divine femininity that influenced Harappan spiritual practices. Animal symbolism played a prominent role in Harappan religious iconography, with certain species appearing repeatedly on seals and other ceremonial artifacts throughout the civilization. The unicorn, depicted on nearly 60% of Harappan seals, may represent a mythical creature or stylized version of real animals such as rhinoceros or aurochs that held special spiritual significance. The consistent portrayal of this mysterious animal across the entire civilization suggests it held special religious or symbolic importance, possibly serving as a protective deity or clan totem that connected communities to spiritual forces. This widespread iconography indicates coordinated religious practices that transcended local variations and united distant settlements under shared belief systems. Other animals frequently depicted in Harappan art include elephants, tigers, water buffalo, and various bird species that carried symbolic meanings beyond their natural characteristics. Elephants appeared both as naturalistic representations and in more stylized forms, sometimes associated with human figures or ritual scenes that suggest ceremonial importance. Tigers, shown with characteristic stripes and powerful builds, may have represented strength or served as symbols of particular deities who protected communities from danger. The presence of these animals in urban contexts where they wouldn't have been encountered in daily life suggests their symbolic rather than literal significance in Harappan spiritual traditions. Daily life in Harappan cities revolved around well-established routines supported by sophisticated urban infrastructure that enabled comfortable living despite challenging environmental conditions. Most families rose before dawn to avoid the intense heat that characterized much of the year in the Indus Valley, beginning each day with carefully planned activities designed to maximize productivity while minimizing discomfort. The first task involved drawing water from private wells or public sources using standardized pottery vessels that archaeologists have discovered in virtually every household throughout Harappan settlements. These water jars, with their distinctive narrow necks and pointed bases, were ingeniously designed to keep contents cool through evaporation while minimizing contamination from dust and insects. Breakfast typically consisted of wheat cakes or barley porridge prepared on terracotta griddles over wood or dried dung fires that provided efficient cooking fuel. Archaeological evidence suggests that Harappan families consumed remarkably varied diets including wheat, barley, peas, sesame, dates, and melons that provided balanced nutrition throughout the seasons. Meat consumption appears to have been limited, with water buffalo, cattle, and goats providing occasional protein supplements during festivals or special occasions. The standardized grinding stones found in most households indicate that grain processing was primarily a domestic activity, though large-scale milling facilities at some sites suggest commercial production for urban markets that served entire neighborhoods. Children in Harappan society enjoyed access to sophisticated toys and games that provide fascinating insights into both recreational activities and educational practices that shaped young minds. Terracotta toys included miniature carts with movable wheels, animal figurines, and whistles shaped like birds that demonstrated remarkable craftsmanship and attention to detail. These toys, found in houses across the social spectrum, suggest that childhood play was valued regardless of family economic status, a remarkable characteristic that distinguished Harappan society from many ancient civilizations where only wealthy children possessed quality playthings. The technical quality of many toys, with carefully modeled details and functional moving parts, indicates specialized craftsmen dedicated to children's entertainment and education. Board games represented another important recreational activity, with several examples discovered at Harappan sites throughout the civilization. The game boards, typically manufactured from fired clay or stone, featured geometric patterns of squares or holes that may have been used with dice or game pieces made from various materials. The rules of these games remain unknown, but their presence in multiple households suggests they were popular pastimes that brought families together during leisure hours and provided entertainment during long evenings or seasonal celebrations. Jewelry and personal adornment played significant roles in Harappan daily life, with both men and women wearing elaborate ornaments crafted from precious metals, stones, and shells that demonstrated wealth, status, and artistic appreciation. Archaeological discoveries include gold and silver bangles, necklaces of carnelian and agate beads, shell ornaments, and bronze mirrors that reflected sophisticated aesthetic sensibilities. The technical sophistication of Harappan jewelry, particularly the precision drilling of stone beads and delicate metalwork of gold ornaments, demonstrates highly developed craftsmanship and aesthetic sensibilities that created beautiful objects coveted throughout the ancient world. The distribution of jewelry across different social levels suggests that personal adornment was accessible to most urban residents, though quality and materials varied according to economic circumstances. Even modest households contained shell bangles and simple bead necklaces that enabled all citizens to participate in cultural traditions of personal beautification, while wealthy families possessed elaborate gold ornaments and precisely crafted stone jewelry that demonstrated superior craftsmanship and expensive materials. Clothing in Harappan society must be reconstructed from indirect archaeological evidence, as organic materials rarely survive in archaeological contexts over such extended periods. However, the presence of numerous spindle whorls, loom weights, and dyeing vats indicates sophisticated textile production that created high-quality fabrics for both domestic use and international export. Cotton cultivation in the Indus Valley provided raw material for what may have been the world's first large-scale cotton textile industry, capable of producing standardized fabrics in substantial quantities. The standardized sizes of spindle whorls suggest consistent thread production methods, while the variety of dyeing facilities indicates that Harappan textiles incorporated multiple colors and decorative patterns that enhanced their aesthetic appeal. The famous priest-king statue provides the clearest evidence for Harappan clothing styles, showing a figure wearing a robe decorated with trefoil patterns that suggest sophisticated weaving techniques. The garment appears to be draped rather than tailored, indicating clothing styles that emphasized flowing fabrics rather than fitted construction that required precise measurements. The elaborate headband worn by the figure, along with similar ornaments found in archaeological contexts, indicates that headwear played important roles in indicating social status or religious affiliation within Harappan communities. Household activities in Harappan cities were organized around central courtyards that served multiple essential functions in daily life. These spaces provided areas for food preparation, craft activities, storage, and social interaction that made them the focal points of family life and community relationships. The courtyards also functioned as light wells that illuminated interior rooms and provided crucial ventilation during hot weather, demonstrating sophisticated understanding of architectural principles that maximized comfort in challenging climatic conditions. Most courtyards included wells, storage areas, and cooking facilities that made them self-contained centers of domestic activity. Food preparation involved sophisticated techniques and equipment that enabled varied and nutritious diets despite limitations imposed by climate and available ingredients. Harappan kitchens typically included multiple types of cooking vessels, storage containers, and processing tools that facilitated complex culinary preparations. Large storage jars held grain supplies that sustained families through seasonal variations, while smaller vessels contained spices, oils, and other ingredients that enhanced flavor and nutrition. Cooking techniques included boiling, roasting, and baking with specialized equipment designed for each method. The presence of tandoor-like ovens at some sites suggests that bread baking was an important culinary technique that produced staple foods consumed throughout Harappan communities. The organization of craft production within households indicates that many families supplemented their income through specialized manufacturing that contributed to the broader economic prosperity of Harappan civilization. Bead-making workshops appeared in residential areas with entire families involved in different stages of production that created valuable trade goods for both domestic and international markets. Children might sort raw materials by type and quality. Women could perform detailed drilling work requiring precision and patience, while men handled the more physically demanding tasks of stone cutting and polishing that required considerable strength. This household-based production system enabled efficient utilization of family labor while maintaining quality control through direct supervision that ensured consistent standards across the entire manufacturing process. Domestic animals played crucial roles in Harappan household economy and daily life, providing essential resources that supported urban populations. Water buffalo supplied milk, draft power, and eventually meat while serving as valuable assets that could be traded or sold during economic difficulties or seasonal variations in income. Cattle fulfilled similar functions, though they appear to have been less common than water buffalo in urban contexts, where space limitations favored smaller, more efficient animals. Chickens provided eggs and meat supplements to daily diets, while dogs served as both companions and guards protecting homes and workshops from theft or intrusion. The standardized feeding troughs and animal shelters found at numerous sites indicate systematic care for domestic animals that recognize their economic importance to household prosperity. Such facilities demonstrate sophisticated understanding of animal husbandry that maximized productivity while maintaining animal health and welfare. The sophisticated urban centers and extensive trade networks that characterized mature Harappan civilization required coordination on a scale unprecedented in the ancient world, yet the mechanisms by which this coordination was achieved remain among archaeology's most perplexing mysteries that continue to puzzle researchers worldwide. Unlike their contemporaries in Mesopotamia, where cuneiform tablets meticulously document the activities of kings and their extensive bureaucracies, or in Egypt, where hieroglyphic inscriptions glorify pharaohs and their divine authority, the Harappans left behind no decipherable records of their political organization that would illuminate their governance structures. This absence of textual evidence, combined with the puzzling lack of obvious royal palaces or monumental architecture celebrating individual rulers, has forced scholars to reconstruct Harappan governance systems entirely from material remains that provide tantalizing clues but no definitive answers about political structures. The standardization that permeated every aspect of Harappan civilization provides the most compelling evidence for centralized administrative control that coordinated activities across vast territories. The uniformity of brick sizes across sites separated by hundreds of kilometers could not have been maintained without systematic oversight and quality control mechanisms that ensured consistency. At Harappa, standard bricks measured 28 by 14 by 7 centimeters, following a precise 4:1 ratio that appears consistently at Mohenjo-daro, Dolavira, Kalibangan, and dozens of smaller settlements throughout the civilization. This consistency extended beyond mere convenience to encompass comprehensive systems of technical standards that govern construction practices throughout Harappan territory. The precision of Harappan weights and measures reveals even more sophisticated administrative systems that facilitated commerce and maintained standards across cultural boundaries. Stone cubes used for weighing followed binary progressions with remarkable accuracy, varying less than 1% between examples found at different archaeological sites spanning the entire civilization. The smallest weight unit, approximately 13.7 grams, was multiplied by factors of 2, 4, 8, and 16 to create larger denominations that facilitated various transaction sizes. Simultaneously, a decimal system operated alongside the binary progression, with weights of 100, 200, and 500 units serving commercial transactions of different scales and complexity. This dual mathematical system required not only advanced understanding of numerical relationships, but also institutional mechanisms to maintain standards across vast territories, populated by diverse communities with varying local customs and practices. Linear measurements showed similar standardization, with a basic unit of approximately 33.5 centimeters appearing in architectural proportions throughout Harappan territory. This Harappan foot governed the dimensions of streets, buildings, and public works with consistent application that suggests centralized planning authority capable of enforcing uniform standards. The main thoroughfares at Mohenjo-daro measured precisely 10.5 meters in width, exactly 30 Harappan feet, while secondary streets maintained consistent widths of 5.25 meters, or 15 feet. Such precision across multiple cities indicates systematic urban planning that extended far beyond local administrative capabilities and required coordinated implementation across the entire civilization. The drainage systems that connected every Harappan house to comprehensive sewage networks demonstrate coordination between individual construction and municipal infrastructure that required sophisticated administrative oversight and technical expertise. At Mohenjo-daro, covered drains running beneath streets maintained consistent gradients and construction standards that ensured proper wastewater flow throughout the city. The integration of private household drains with public sewage systems required building codes and inspection procedures that coordinated private construction with municipal engineering projects. Such coordination demanded administrative systems capable of managing complex technical requirements while accommodating individual household needs and preferences. Archaeological evidence suggests that Harappan administrative systems operated through a combination of centralized standard setting and decentralized implementation that balanced uniformity with local autonomy. The uniformity of technical specifications indicates central authority capable of establishing and enforcing civilization-wide standards that maintained quality and compatibility across diverse regions. Regional variations in decorative styles and local adaptations suggest considerable local autonomy and implementation that allowed communities to maintain cultural distinctiveness while participating in broader Harappan systems. This balance between standardization and flexibility may have been key to maintaining political stability across vast territories and diverse environmental conditions. The absence of clearly identifiable palaces or royal residences in Harappan cities presents one of the most significant challenges to understanding their political organization and power structures. Unlike Mesopotamian cities, where massive palace complexes housed rulers and their extensive bureaucracies, Harappan settlements contain no buildings that obviously served as royal residences or centers of monarchical power. The larger structures, such as the Great Bath and granary complexes at Mohenjo-daro, served apparent public functions rather than glorifying individual rulers or providing private luxury for elite families. These monumental buildings suggest collective investment in community welfare rather than personal aggrandizement by powerful individuals. The so-called Priest King's House at Mohenjo-daro, despite its modern designation, shows no clear evidence of royal occupation or ceremonial functions. This large residence, covering approximately 200 square meters, featured multiple courtyards, sophisticated drainage connections, and high-quality construction, but lacked throne rooms, audience halls, or treasure chambers, typically associated with royal palaces. The building's layout suggests wealthy merchant or administrator housing rather than monarchical residence, indicating that even the elite lived in structures that prioritize comfort and functionality over political display or ceremonial grandeur. This absence of monumental royal architecture extends to religious buildings, where Harappan cities again differ dramatically from contemporary civilizations throughout the ancient world. Mesopotamian ziggurats and Egyptian temples served not only religious functions but also as symbols of royal power and divine authority that legitimized political hierarchies. The lack of comparable structures in Harappan cities suggests either different religious traditions that did not require monumental architecture or political systems that did not depend on religious legitimacy for royal authority. This distinction indicates fundamentally different approaches to governance and social organization. The interpretation of this architectural evidence has led scholars to propose various alternative models for Harappan political organization that challenge conventional assumptions about ancient governance. Some suggest that the civilization was governed by merchant oligarchies where wealthy traders collectively managed urban centers and coordinated interregional commerce through cooperative agreements. The sophisticated commercial systems and standardized production methods that characterized Harappan civilization would have required extensive coordination that merchant organizations could have provided without centralized royal authority. Such systems would explain the emphasis on trade infrastructure and standardization without requiring monarchical control. Alternative theories propose that Harappan cities were governed by republican institutions similar to those that would later emerge in ancient Greece and Rome, where power was distributed among multiple officials or governing councils rather than concentrated in individual rulers. The apparent absence of extreme social stratification, combined with the lack of obvious royal symbolism, suggests political systems that may have operated through collective decision-making processes rather than monarchical decree. Such systems could explain the remarkable coordination evident in Harappan urban planning and economic organization. The standardized public works and coordinated urban planning could have been achieved through collective decision-making processes that brought together representatives from different communities, craft guilds or merchant organizations. This model would explain both the sophisticated coordination and the apparent absence of individual rulers who typically dominated ancient civilizations. These alternative governance models suggest that Harappan civilization may have pioneered political innovations that wouldn't be seen elsewhere for centuries, creating systems that balanced individual autonomy with collective coordination in ways that enabled unprecedented urban development and commercial success across vast territories and diverse populations. What if an entire civilization managed to thrive for over 1,000 years without kings, without massive monuments to individual rulers, and possibly without major wars? Deep in the valleys of ancient Pakistan and India lies evidence of something that challenges everything we thought we knew about how early civilizations operated. The Harappan civilization didn't just disappear into history, they left behind clues that suggest they built one of the most sophisticated yet puzzling societies the world has ever seen. Their mysterious script remains uncracked to this day, taunting archaeologists with symbols that could unlock secrets about a completely different way of organizing human society. These aren't random scratches on ancient pottery minor. They're systematic markings that appear on thousands of seals, each one potentially holding administrative secrets that modern governments would recognize. The symbols show up in patterns so consistent across vast distances that they clearly represent some form of organized bureaucracy, yet they're unlike anything we see in Egypt or Mesopotamia during the same period. When archaeologists examine these seals, they discover something remarkable about how this civilization managed its affairs. The standardization is breathtaking. Seals found in cities hundreds of miles apart follow identical formats, suggesting a level of administrative coordination that would impress modern logistics experts. These weren't crude attempts at record-keeping by primitive people struggling to organize their communities. Instead, evidence points to literate administrators who understood systematic documentation methods that spanned an area larger than modern Pakistan. The brevity of most inscriptions tells its own fascinating story. Rather than lengthy royal proclamations celebrating individual achievements, Harappan writing appears focused on practical identification and basic record-keeping functions. This suggests administrators who valued efficiency over ego, prioritizing functional communication that served immediate bureaucratic needs rather than propaganda designed to glorify rulers. Distribution patterns of different seal types reveal tantalizing hints about how this society structured its hierarchy. Certain designs cluster around major urban centers, while others concentrate in smaller settlements or specialized production facilities. This geographic distribution possibly reflects administrative ranks within a broader governmental framework that managed territories through systematic organization rather than personal charisma or divine authority. The discovery of identical seals at locations separated by enormous distances presents archaeologists with compelling evidence for either direct administrative control or standardized commercial practices that transcended local political boundaries. Either explanation requires sophisticated coordination mechanisms that could maintain consistency across geographical barriers that would challenge modern communication systems. Comparing Harappan organization with their Mesopotamian contemporaries reveals striking contrasts that highlight unique characteristics of Indus Valley political development. Mesopotamian cuneiform tablets from cities like Ur and Babylon document elaborate bureaucratic hierarchies featuring specialized officials managing taxation systems, military operations, religious ceremonies, and commercial regulations. Royal inscriptions celebrate military victories, construction achievements, and divine favor, providing unmistakable evidence for monarchical authority backed by ideological justification. Egyptian civilization during the same era featured even more centralized royal power, with pharaohs claiming divine status while constructing massive monuments designed to ensure their immortality. The pyramid complexes at Giza, built during the 4th dynasty, required coordination of tens of thousands of workers, representing state resources on scales that completely dwarfed any known Harappan construction project. These monuments function not merely as royal tombs, but as symbols of pharaonic power that reinforced political authority through architectural grandeur, designed to inspire awe and submission. The contrast with Harappan civilization becomes absolutely striking when examining priorities and resource allocation. While Mesopotamian and Egyptian rulers invested enormous resources in monuments celebrating their individual achievements and divine connections, Harappan leaders' monuments, if they existed in traditional forms, apparently prioritized practical infrastructure, serving entire communities rather than personal glorification. The sophisticated drainage systems, public baths, and granary complexes characterizing Harappan cities represented collective investments in urban welfare, rather than individual aggrandizement. This fundamental difference in priorities potentially reflects distinct political ideologies or practical adaptations to environmental and economic conditions unique to the Indus Valley region. The Harappan emphasis on trade and commerce may have necessitated more collaborative political structures capable of coordinating complex economic activities without the rigid hierarchies characterizing agricultural states in Mesopotamia and Egypt. Environmental challenges, including seasonal flooding and periodic droughts, may have favored political systems emphasizing collective resource management over individual accumulation of wealth and power. Archaeological evidence for conflict and warfare in Harappan territory remains surprisingly limited, contributing to ongoing debates about whether these societies were unusually peaceful or whether evidence of violence simply hasn't been preserved in archaeological contexts. Defense walls surrounding major cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-daro indicate awareness of potential threats, yet these fortifications appear designed more for flood control and urban organization than military defense against human enemies. The walls at Harappa, constructed of fired brick and reaching heights up to 15 meters, incorporated sophisticated drainage systems while featuring gateways that facilitated commercial traffic rather than military control. This architectural approach suggests priorities focused on managing natural environmental challenges and promoting economic activity rather than preparing for siege warfare or territorial conquest. Weapons discovered in Harappan archaeological contexts consist primarily of tools serving dual purposes rather than specialized military equipment designed exclusively for combat. Bronze axes, spears, and daggers appear in relatively small quantities and show design characteristics suggesting use for hunting activities, craft production, or personal protection rather than organized warfare between competing armies. The absence of large weapon caches, military barracks, or battle scenes in Harappan artistic representations contrasts sharply with contemporary civilizations where warfare played prominent roles in both political organization and cultural expression. Regional variations in Harappan material culture suggest a political system balancing centralized control with local self-rule. Across the vast civilization's expanse, technical standards remained uniform, yet decorative elements in regional adaptations highlighted the unique identities of individual cities and areas. This delicate balance between unity and diversity might have been a key factor in sustaining political cohesion across diverse populations and landscapes. Following the peak of Harappan civilization around 1900 BC, a gradual decline unfolded, offering clues about the strengths and shortcomings of its political framework. Unlike abrupt collapses or violent overthrows seen in other ancient cultures, Harappan sites exhibit little evidence of sudden destruction or internal upheaval. Instead, political structures appear to have slowly lost their efficiency, hinting that while effective during times of prosperity and stable environments, these systems may have lacked the resilience or coercive clout to navigate shifting challenges. The brilliance of Harappan political organization finds its clearest expression in their extraordinary technological achievements, which set their cities apart from all contemporary urban centers. These engineering wonders were not mere constructions but thoughtful responses to the harsh realities of urban existence in the demanding Indus Valley environment. These innovations demanded coordinated planning, expert knowledge, and rigorous quality control, extending over immense regions with remarkable consistency. The hydraulic engineering solutions supplying water to Harappan cities stood unmatched in the ancient world until the Roman era. At Mohenjo-daro, for instance, more than 700 wells were strategically placed to ensure water availability throughout the city. Some wells served clusters of homes, while others catered exclusively to affluent residences. Built with meticulously fitted fired brick rings, these wells penetrated various soil layers to reach dependable groundwater. Uniformity in well construction guaranteed consistent water quality and protected against surface contaminants. Each ring possessed an exact internal diameter of 1 meter and walls, measuring 12 centimeters thick, exemplifying the methodical approach permeating all Harappan engineering ventures. Ingeniously designed wellheads shielded water supplies from pollution while facilitating easy extraction. Raised brick platforms encircled the well openings to prevent runoff contamination, and carefully constructed drainage channels diverted overflow away. The wells featured stepped interiors allowing workers to enter for cleaning and repairs, safeguarding long-term functionality. Sediment studies confirm that these systems functioned effectively for centuries, a testament to both impeccable construction and diligent ongoing maintenance. Perhaps the crowning achievement in Harappan engineering was their comprehensive drainage network linking every household to a unified sewage system. At Mohenjo-daro, covered brick drains ran beneath streets, precisely graded to foster uninterrupted flow from residential zones into major collection conduits. Crafted with tightly fitted bricks and waterproof mortar, these drains incorporated manholes at regular distances for cleaning access. The principal channels measured up to 2 meters wide and were roofed with cobbled bricks capable of supporting street traffic while shielding sewage flow below. Integrating private house drainage with municipal infrastructure demanded close coordination. Branch drains connected individual homes to main street sewers, maintaining correct flow angles and containing settling chambers to trap solid waste. Household drains included removable brick covers, enabling residents to clear blockages. Municipal systems featured larger settling tanks and sumps maintained by specialized workers. This systematic waste management prevented sewage buildup that haunted other ancient cities, contributing to the remarkable health found in Harappan skeletal remains. In more arid regions like Talavera, Harappan engineers adapted water technologies innovatively. Despite the scarcity of water, this city developed elaborate methods for capturing, storing, and distributing rainfall. 16 reservoirs of various sizes were built, the largest exceeding 70 meters in length and capable of holding millions of liters of monsoon water. Constructed with precisely cut stone walls and waterproofed using clay and lime mortar, these tanks minimized water loss through seepage. Employing advanced hydraulic principles, the system included spillways, sluice gates, and distribution channels to regulate supplies throughout dry months. The main reservoir's stepped design allowed access at multiple depths, while smaller distribution tanks scattered citywide ensured fair water access for all inhabitants. Stormwater channels directed monsoon runoff into reservoirs while protecting neighborhoods from flooding. Such comprehensive water management enabled a thriving urban center in an environment where water scarcity otherwise would have curbed large settlements. Building these sophisticated systems required precise surveying to guarantee correct gradients and flows. At Mohenjo-daro, drainage slopes held at around 1/500, optimizing sewage flow while reducing brick channel erosion. Achieving this precision demanded not only advanced mathematical skills but also practical tools and techniques to convert theory into exact construction specifications. Harappan metallurgical accomplishments combined technical innovation with strict quality control, allowing the mass production of standardized metal items. Bronze craftsmanship reached extraordinary levels, with artisans mastering alloy compositions tailored for specific uses. Studies of Harappan bronze reveal uniform ratios of copper and tin, providing optimal hardness and durability in tools, weapons, and ornamental objects. Typically, bronze consisted of 88 to 92% copper and 8 to 12% tin, ratios requiring meticulous measurement and quality during smelting. The lost wax casting technique, perfected by Harappan metal workers, enabled the crafting of intricate bronze pieces with precise details and dimensions. A famous example, the dancing girl figurine from Mohenjo-daro, showcases artistic finesse impossible through simpler molding methods. This casting process demanded expertise in wax modeling, ceramic shell creation, and precise temperature control for bronze pouring. Beyond craftsmanship, these metalworking achievements reveal a broader administrative structure underpinning quality control and production logistics. Ensuring uniform alloy mixtures and consistent casting required coordinated efforts across workshops dispersed throughout the civilization. This logistical precision implies the presence of trained specialists and bureaucratic oversight dedicated to maintaining standards essential for both everyday tools and objects, likely used in trade or ceremonial contexts. When considering the political implications, these technological feats demonstrate a remarkable level of planning and resource management. The centralized knowledge and coordination necessary to sustain these urban centers suggests political systems imbued with authority, without relying solely on visible monarchies or ruler cults. This raises intriguing possibilities about the nature of Harappan leadership. The absence of monumental royal tombs or palaces contrasts with contemporary civilizations, hinting at political organizations possibly led by councils, merchant oligarchies, or collective governing bodies rather than singular rulers. It's conceivable that the governance model emphasized practical collaboration and consensus, reflecting values that extended into urban planning, resource distribution, and economic regulation. The decentralized yet coordinated political structure might have been instrumental in balancing the needs of diverse city populations and managing scarce environmental resources with remarkable efficiency. Such an approach could explain the civilization's longevity and resilience amidst ecological and social pressures. Despite their achievements, the gradual loss of centralized control towards the civilization's end indicates inherent vulnerabilities. Changes in climate, trade disruptions, or shifting population dynamics might have strained a political system grounded on cooperation rather than coercion. This fragility could have made adaptation difficult in times requiring rapid, forceful responses. Ultimately, the Harappan story offers a compelling glimpse into alternative pathways of ancient urban governance. Urban societies prioritizing communal welfare, technological innovation, and trade diplomacy over conquest and monumental leadership. Large-scale bronze working in Harappan cities reveals just how advanced and systematic their approach to technology and organization really was. Across the region, metal objects maintain a level of consistency in shape, weight, and alloy composition that points directly to unified training systems and stringent quality oversight. Furnaces uncovered at Harappa were not basic setups but rather robust industrial machines capable of reaching temperatures well above 1000 degrees Celsius, utilizing refractory bricks and bellows to achieve optimal conditions for copper-tin alloying. These metal working areas show evidence of efficient fuel use and clever flue design, indicating a sophisticated understanding of both material needs and operational logistics. Axe heads, spear points, knives, each found in distant cities, mirror one another in detail, signifying shared standards and widespread knowledge. Every tool, from delicate carving implements to sturdy agricultural equipment, was crafted with purpose-driven alloy ratios, greater tin for harder tools, lower amounts for objects needing flexibility or intricate work. Such specialization demonstrates a deep grasp of chemistry and metallurgical principles. Harappan brickwork marked another technological leap, with widespread use of fired bricks achieving strengths and weather resistance far beyond what most ancient civilizations accomplished. Kilns routinely fired bricks at temperatures topping 900 degrees Celsius, enabling massive structures like public baths, storehouses, and administrative buildings to stand the test of time. But it was the precision, the famous ratio of 4 to 2 to 1 for length, width, and thickness, that defined their buildings. Whether from major cities or remote outposts, bricks share these dimensions, pointing to either centralized production methods or rigorous technical enforcement. Mortars used in Harappan construction blended lime, gypsum, and natural compounds into blends that formed long-lasting, waterproof seals between bricks. The Great Bath, for instance, featured layers of bitumen alongside advanced mortars to keep water from seeping through. These materials not only supported rapid building but ensured easy repair, expansion, and ongoing maintenance with standardized parts. Urban foundations tackled complex challenges posed by floodplain soils. Deep base systems with stone and brick supported multi-story construction, while drainage lines channeled water away from critical supports to avoid weakening over time. The builders even included expansion joints and flexible connectors, protecting buildings from ground movement and subsidence, a clear sign of advanced understanding in structural engineering. Public facilities and monuments showcase concerted planning by specialized teams. The monumental Great Bath required precise waterproofing, carved stone steps, and spacious galleries, all executed with systematic coordination. Vast granary complexes included intricate air channels to preserve stored grain against insects and humidity, maintaining food reserves for entire cities. Even everyday homes were built with these same principles, no matter the status of their inhabitants. Small houses still had efficient drains, rooms in standardized sizes, and solid materials, suggesting a set of building codes or widespread technical instruction. This universal quality points to intensive training for masons and craftsmen and strong oversight in city planning. Transportation networks linking city to city were practical marvels. Artificial harbors at Lothal, for example, included a massive brick dock which employed lock systems so ships could move with the tides, protected from rising monsoon waters by spillways and robust walls designed to withstand changing pressures. The dock's carefully calculated entrance allowed for ships of varying sizes and guaranteed safe depth despite fluctuating water levels. Roads built throughout the region had graded surfaces, integrated drainage, and were precisely wide enough for standardized carts whose wheel spans matched from settlement to settlement. These choices simplified commerce and urban movement, minimizing costly repairs and maximizing lifespan. To maintain these extensive networks, the Harpans mobilized large teams of specialized workers, managed raw materials, and distributed technical expertise across hundreds of cities and towns. Consistent construction quality over such distances suggests the presence of organized training centers, standard operating procedures, and a robust system for monitoring infrastructure conditions. Administrative records, possibly encoded by their yet unread script, underpinned logistics and supply chains, aided by communication and identification markers such as standardized seals. Coordination was further enhanced by universal weights and measures, facilitating not only trade but also technical communication. Seals impersonally stamped on goods and documents provided instant recognition of origin and authenticity, linking disparate administrative centers and production facilities in a web of economic reliability. The communication methods central to this system found their most mysterious form in the undeciphered script that appears on thousands of artifacts, from tools to trade goods. These symbols are not just decorative, they functioned as practical tools for identification, regulation, and perhaps even inventory management across the Harpan world. Their distribution and consistency hint at a civilization that valued clarity, efficiency, and systematic record-keeping above all else, ensuring the smooth operation of a vast urban landscape maintained without the need for monumental royal authority. The concise inscriptions found on numerous Harappan artifacts represent perhaps the most intriguing unsolved mystery in ancient writing studies. These markings, usually containing only a handful of symbols arranged in neat horizontal lines, have puzzled archaeologists and linguists since their discovery nearly a century ago. Despite seemingly simple forms, these short texts cover a remarkable range of objects, from clay seals and pottery to copper plates, bone tools, and bronze ornaments, spanning large regions and diverse communities throughout the Indus Valley Civilization. Such widespread use points not to isolated decoration, but to an organized system of written communication that reached across the civilization's immense territory. The sheer pervasiveness of the script is extraordinary. About 4,000 inscriptions have been catalogued, each employing a selection from roughly 400 distinct graphical signs. This moderate inventory places the system in between the symbol counts of purely logographic systems like ancient Egyptian, where each mark represents a word or concept, and syllabic script such as Linear B, which assign marks to specific sounds. The hybrid nature has led many experts to suspect that the Harappan script could combine logograms for concepts and words with phonetic signs for syllables, forming a flexible, effective medium for recording ideas and transactions. Statistical studies of symbol frequency and placement supply valuable clues. Out of the entire symbol set, only about 10 signs dominate the corpus, with the most common appearing in as much as 40% of inscriptions. A vertical shape resembling a pillar with transverse strokes stands out, found in around 15% of all examples, and usually placed first in a sequence. This suggests a role as a category indicator, a common feature in scripts as diverse as Chinese, where certain marks identify word classes, and Egyptian, where determinatives group related terms. Another frequently seen symbol, resembling a vessel or pot, occurs most often at the end of inscriptions and constitutes roughly 8% of the total, hinting at its use in classification, transaction type, or even grammatical closure. The logic behind the system's structure becomes more apparent with advanced computational analyses. Researchers have used techniques like entropy calculation and engram mapping, uncovering patterns typical of a genuine writing system as opposed to simple ornamentation. For example, the conditional entropy in Harpan inscriptions, measuring how predictable each symbol is based on its predecessors, fits the range for authentic languages, suggesting meaning and syntax rather than randomness. This evidence refutes the idea that the inscriptions were merely decorative. Instead, they point to a functioning code of communication. Examining the directionality of writing further supports a sophisticated system of literacy. Most Harpan texts were inscribed to be read from right to left, a pattern consistently found on seals, tablets, and vessels in every corner of the civilization. Though a few samples show lines running alternately left and right, a style known as boastrophedon, the overwhelming preference signals established conventions in scribal practice. On rare occasions, inscriptions run the opposite way, likely dictated by the shape or size of the object, further illustrating the adaptability and expertise of ancient scribes. Symbol arrangement within inscriptions reveals potential grammatical or syntactic rules. Some signs frequently appear in specific slots at the start, middle, or end, implying stable rules for ordering concepts, actions, or qualifiers. This regularity echoes the way words and morphemes are organized in known languages, laying the groundwork for specialists to identify possible divisions between units, akin to words or phrases in the script. Objects bearing the script also shed light on the role writing played in Harappan society. The majority, nearly 60%, are seals, typically small squares of carved steatite about 2 to 3 centimeters across. These feature brief texts alongside animal figures or geometric patterns, and were likely used as stamps to make impressions on clay, textile, or goods packaging. Their standardized form and refined execution suggest formal, official use, perhaps for authentication, identification, or regulating economic activity. The continuous discovery of identical seal types, even on sites separated by hundreds of kilometers, supports the notion of either direct regulatory control over trade or universally recognized standards across vast and diverse territories. Next in prevalence are ceramic vessels, storage jars serving bowls and containers, each marked with short inscriptions, generally 1 to 3 symbols, incised or painted before firing. Placement near handles or lips would have ensured visibility and use, strengthening interpretations of these signs as property marks, inventory numbers, or indications of content type or capacity. The unifying nature of these marks, identical across distant pottery centers, signals a civilization-wide system that recorded, tracked, and managed resources, perhaps prefiguring modern supply chain practices and inventory management. Copper tablets provide a more exclusive glimpse into administrative sophistication. Often rectangular, about 3 to 5 centimeters long, these slim metal pieces display finely incised marks in carefully arranged sequences. The durability of copper suggests the intention was long-term record-keeping, preserving legal agreements, trade contracts, or lists too important to be left on perishable materials. Given that relatively few have survived, it's plausible that most routine communications and accounts were scribed on organic surfaces, leaving only the most crucial records in the archaeological record. Ivory and bone artifacts, such as combs, rods, and decorative items, present another important group. Script markings here required specialized artistic and technical skill, as working hard organic materials called for precision and expertise. The evidence points to not just literacy among administrative elites, but a broader adoption of writing by skilled craftsmen, integrating textual symbols into daily life and personal possessions. This overlap between artistry and literacy reveals a society in which knowledge and technical proficiency were closely paired. Metal objects inscribed with the script, most commonly bronze implements or ornate silver jewelry, compose a smaller segment of the corpus, but often stand apart in quality, design, and finish. The difficulty of carving or embossing symbols into hard metal surfaces implies these items held exceptional status, likely reserved for ceremonial occasions, elite property, or particularly significant economic activity. Their meticulous craftsmanship supports the link between writing, specialized production, and high social standing. The enduring mystery of the Harappan script remains partly unsolved due to the absence of a bilingual Rosetta Stone artifact, yet mounting evidence demonstrates that these symbols once formed the backbone of a comprehensive communication network. Their distribution and function suggest that literacy in the civilization wasn't restricted to a handful of priests or bureaucrats, but instead permeated commercial, personal, and artisanal spheres. Far more than decorative motifs, the inscriptions helped address economic and administrative complexities unique to the Indus Valley environment, establishing standards, transmitting information, and uniting widely dispersed populations under shared systems of interaction and order. Archaeologists continue to debate the full extent and meaning of this ancient script. However, the convergence of statistical, contextual, and material evidence strongly supports the interpretation of the Harappan inscriptions as the signature of an advanced society, one possessed of both technological ingenuity and organizational discipline, all managed through an unresolved yet undeniably sophisticated written language. As research presses forward, each new discovery deepens the appreciation for how people once solved problems, regulated their world, and recorded the essentials of life through the enigmatic marks that still defy modern understanding. The geographic spread of inscribed artifacts across Harappan territory reveals fascinating patterns that illuminate how this ancient civilization organized its administrative networks and communication systems. When archaeologists map where different types of written materials appear, a clear hierarchy emerges that tells the story of how information flowed through their society and which locations held the most administrative power. Major urban centers like Harappa and Mohenjo-daro have produced the richest collections of inscribed objects, particularly high concentrations of seals and copper tablets, that suggest these cities functioned as primary administrative hubs. The sheer volume and variety of written materials from these sites indicates they served as nerve centers for bureaucratic activity, coordinating economic transactions, maintaining records, and managing the complex logistics required to govern such an extensive territory. The sophisticated nature of inscriptions found at these locations, including the most elaborate copper tablets and intricately carved seals, suggests that specialized scribes and administrators concentrated their activities in these major population centers. Smaller settlements throughout the region typically yield fewer inscribed objects, with pottery marks and simple seals predominating over more complex administrative materials. This distribution pattern suggests that while basic literacy and marking practices extended throughout Harappan society, the most sophisticated writing activities remained centralized in major urban areas. Provincial towns and villages apparently relied on simpler identification systems for local needs, while depending on larger centers for complex administrative functions that required advanced literacy skills. Even remote outposts like Shortagai in Afghanistan contain inscribed materials, demonstrating that the script served communication needs across the civilization's entire sphere of influence. The presence of standardized seals and pottery marks at such distant locations indicates either direct administrative control from major centers or widespread adoption of common communication standards that facilitated long-distance coordination. These findings suggest that Harappan administrative systems possessed remarkable reach and effectiveness in maintaining consistency across challenging geographical barriers. Comparative analysis with contemporary writing systems provides valuable context for understanding the unique characteristics and limitations of the Harappan script. The Proto-Elamite system used in southwestern Iran during roughly the same period shares several features with Harappan writing, including brief inscriptions, combinations of logographic and phonetic elements, and primary use on administrative objects. However, Proto-Elamite texts include longer passages and more obvious accounting records, suggesting different administrative traditions despite technological similarities between the two civilizations. The cuneiform writing system of Mesopotamia, with its extensive corpus of legal, commercial, and literary texts, demonstrates the potential for early scripts to record complex information across multiple domains of human activity. This comparison makes the consistent brevity of Harappan inscriptions particularly intriguing, raising questions about whether their writing system possessed limitations or served specialized functions that didn't require lengthy texts. Scholarly debate continues regarding whether the Harappan symbols constitute a true writing system, reflecting fundamental disagreements about the criteria for distinguishing authentic scripts from other symbolic communication methods. Supporters of the writing interpretation point to statistical properties of symbol sequences, consistent directional conventions, and systematic positional distributions that characterize established scripts throughout history. They argue that inscription brevity reflects specialized administrative functions focused on identification and basic record keeping, rather than inherent limitations in the system's expressive capabilities. Critics challenge this interpretation, arguing that symbol sequences are too brief and repetitive to represent a fully developed script, capable of recording the diverse information typically associated with early writing systems. They propose alternative explanations, including complex religious or ceremonial symbol systems, elaborate commercial identification marks, or sophisticated non-linguistic communication methods adapted to specific cultural requirements. These scholars emphasize the absence of longer texts and apparent lack of variation in inscription types as evidence against interpreting the symbols as representing spoken language. Recent computational approaches have attempted to resolve this debate through quantitative analysis, comparing script properties to known writing systems and non-linguistic symbol systems. Machine learning algorithms trained on various symbolic communication types consistently classify Harappan inscriptions as more similar to authentic writing than to decorative patterns or simple identification marks. However, the limited corpus size and individual inscription brevity continue to constrain the conclusiveness of these analytical approaches. Non-textual communication methods within Harappan civilization encompassed sophisticated systems of standardized imagery, religious symbolism, and administrative marking that complemented and possibly superseded written communication in many contexts. These visual communication networks operated through carefully regulated artistic conventions that conveyed specific meanings across vast distances and diverse cultural contexts. Animal motifs appearing on Harappan seals represent one of history's most systematic examples of symbolic communication with specific animals associated with particular regions, social groups, or administrative functions. The unicorn, depicted on nearly 60% of all seals, appears with remarkable consistency in pose, anatomical details, and associated symbols, suggesting standardized iconographic conventions that conveyed precise meanings to viewers throughout their society. The artistic treatment maintains strict adherence to established visual formulas, indicating either centralized training for seal carvers or comprehensive style guides that governed production standards. Elephant motifs, appearing on approximately 15% of seals, show consistent artistic treatment with specific anatomical features emphasized across different examples. These elephants typically appear in profile with carefully rendered ears, trunks, and tusks that suggest naturalistic observation combined with standardized artistic conventions. The geographical distribution of elephant seals correlates with regions where these animals would have been encountered naturally, possibly indicating regional administrative divisions or specialized trade relationships related to ivory and other elephant products. Tiger seals, representing roughly 10% of the corpus, feature consistently depicted stripe patterns and muscular builds that demonstrate both artistic skill and systematic iconographic standards. The technical precision required to carve these detailed animal figures on small steatite surfaces indicates specialized craftsmen who possessed both artistic training and knowledge of symbolic systems governing seal production. The consistency of these representations across vast geographical distances suggests either centralized training programs or comprehensive iconographic manuals that standardized artistic production throughout the civilization. Water buffalo seals show particular concentration in core Indus Valley regions, where these animals played crucial roles in agricultural production and transportation. Artistic treatment emphasizes distinctive horns and robust builds with consistent attention to anatomical details, suggesting direct observation of living animals. The association of water buffalo imagery with agricultural regions may indicate administrative specialization related to farming activities or livestock management, demonstrating how animal symbolism reflected economic and environmental realities within Harappan society. Geometric symbols accompanying animal motifs represent another sophisticated communication system operating alongside textual inscriptions. These symbols, including various combinations of circles, lines, triangles, and complex geometric forms, appear with systematic variations suggesting meaningful distinctions rather than random decoration. Mathematical precision in these geometric elements, combined with consistent proportional relationships, indicates sophisticated understanding of geometric principles and systematic symbolic conventions. Standardized imagery systems extended beyond seals to encompass pottery decoration, architectural ornaments, and personal accessories that created comprehensive visual communication networks throughout Harappan society. Pottery motifs, including fish scales, intersecting circles, and plant patterns, appear with remarkable consistency across different production centers, indicating shared artistic traditions and possibly symbolic meanings that transcended local cultural variations. The technical precision required to maintain these decorative standards across such vast territories demonstrates sophisticated quality control systems and standardized training practices for artisans. Religious symbolism incorporated systematic iconographic elements that may have served communication functions within ritual and ceremonial contexts. The trefoil pattern appearing on the famous priest-king statue and various other objects shows consistent proportional relationships and execution techniques, suggesting standardized religious or ceremonial significance. Mathematical precision in these symbolic elements, combined with widespread distribution, indicates systematic symbolic communication that operated alongside or independently of textual writing systems, creating multiple overlapping networks for transmitting information and maintaining cultural coherence across the Harappan world. The intricate role seals played in Harappan trade and administration reveals sophisticated systems that went far beyond simple identification, encompassing complex authentication protocols that enabled commercial transactions across enormous distances and diverse cultural boundaries. These small carved objects represented much more than decorative accessories. They functioned as the backbone of economic security and administrative coordination throughout the civilization's extensive network of cities, trading posts, and production centers. Creating these seals demanded remarkable technical expertise, requiring specialized stone-cutting implements and highly developed artistic abilities that suggest ownership represented substantial investment and possibly official authorization from administrative authorities. The uniformity of formats and stringent quality control evident throughout seal production points to systematic oversight that maintained the integrity of identification systems across the entire commercial network. Such consistency couldn't have emerged accidentally. It required coordinated planning and enforcement mechanisms that operated across vast territories with remarkable efficiency. Archaeological discoveries from trading contexts demonstrate that seals served multiple critical functions including commodity identification, quality certification, and transaction authentication. The recovery of clay seal impressions at numerous sites reveals that merchants pressed their seals into clay sealings that secured containers and packages during transport, providing tamper-evident security for valuable goods moving along dangerous trade routes. The standardized impression techniques and consistent quality of these sealings showcase systematic commercial practices designed to protect both merchants and consumers throughout extensive Harappan trading networks that connected the Indus Valley with distant regions, including Mesopotamia, Central Asia, and the Iranian Plateau. The sophistication of these authentication systems suggests a level of commercial organization that rivaled and possibly exceeded contemporary civilizations. Unlike simple ownership marks or decorative elements, Harappan seals operated within comprehensive regulatory frameworks that established standards, verified authenticity, and facilitated dispute resolution across cultural and linguistic boundaries. The technical precision required to maintain these standards across hundreds of production sites and thousands of individual items indicates administrative capabilities that could coordinate complex logistical operations while maintaining rigorous quality control. However, the sophisticated communication systems that had bound Harappan civilization together for nearly a millennium faced their greatest challenge as environmental conditions began shifting dramatically around 2500 BC. Subtle but persistent changes in climate patterns started altering the fundamental ecological relationships that supported densely populated cities and extensive agricultural systems throughout the Indus Valley. These environmental pressures would ultimately reshape Harappan society more profoundly than any political upheaval or military conquest, forcing adaptations that revealed both the remarkable resilience and inherent limitations of one of antiquity's most sophisticated civilizations. Paleoclimatic evidence from multiple scientific sources indicates that stable monsoon patterns supporting Harappan agriculture began experiencing significant variations around 2200 BC. Marine sediment cores extracted from the Arabian Sea revealed increasing concentrations of wind-blown terrestrial material, suggesting reduced monsoon intensity and shortened rainy seasons that compromised agricultural productivity. Lake sediments from the Thar Desert show progressive aridification with pollen records indicating replacement of grassland and woodland vegetation with drought-resistant shrubs and desert plants adapted to harsher conditions. Tree ring data from Himalayan foothills, though limited for this early period, suggests increased frequency of drought years and reduced summer precipitation across the broader South Asian region. The monsoon system that had sustained Harappan civilization operated through complex interactions between ocean temperatures, atmospheric pressure systems, and seasonal wind patterns that brought moisture-laden air from the Arabian Sea across the subcontinent. Summer monsoons typically began in June, delivering heavy rains that recharged groundwater systems filled artificial reservoirs, and provided moisture necessary for kharif crops including rice, cotton, and various legumes. Winter months brought lighter but crucial precipitation supporting rabi crops like wheat and barley, creating agricultural surpluses that fed urban populations and supported craft specialization, enabling the complex economic systems characterizing mature Harappan society. Archaeological evidence from multiple Harappan sites reveals the devastating impacts of changing precipitation patterns on sophisticated urban water management systems. At Mohenjo-daro, well levels began dropping significantly after 2200 BC, with numerous wells showing evidence of deepening operations as residents desperately attempted to reach declining groundwater tables. The intricate drainage systems that had efficiently managed wastewater for centuries began experiencing capacity problems as reduced water flow concentrated sewage and created serious sanitation challenges. Excavation layers from this period show increased accumulation of organic waste and evidence of more frequent flooding during intense but brief precipitation events that overwhelmed compromised infrastructure. The gradual desiccation of the Gaga-Hakra river system represented perhaps the most catastrophic environmental challenge facing eastern Harappan settlements. This massive waterway, possibly fed by Himalayan glacial melt and seasonal monsoon runoff, had supported numerous urban centers including Gambariwala, Rakhigarhi, and dozens of smaller settlements across what is now the Kholistan Desert and Rajasthan. Satellite imagery and archaeological surveys reveal remains of this ancient river system, with paleochannels extending over 1,000 kilometers from Himalayan foothills to the Arabian Sea coast. Hydrological analysis of the Gaga-Hakra system suggests its decline resulted from multiple interconnected factors, including tectonic activity, climate change, and possible river capture events that diverted crucial water sources. The Sutlej River, which may have been a major tributary during Harappan times, appears to have shifted course eastward to join the Indus system, dramatically reducing water flow in eastern channels. Simultaneously, the Amuna River may have been captured by the Ganges system, further reducing water sources that sustain the Gaga's massive flow and the cities that depended on it. The archaeological record along former Gaga channels reveals gradual abandonment of settlements as water sources became increasingly unreliable. At Kalibangan, one of the major urban centers along this river system, excavations show a clear sequence of adaptation and eventual abandonment. Early mature Haban levels display typical urban planning with sophisticated drainage systems and impressive public buildings. Later levels show evidence of desperate water conservation measures including additional wells, modified drainage systems, and changes in residential architecture suggesting adaptation to severe water scarcity. Settlement pattern changes along the Gaga reveal how communities responded to environmental stress through strategic relocation and resource management. Many smaller settlements were abandoned entirely, with populations apparently concentrating in larger centers that could better manage scarce water resources through collective action and coordinated planning. Archaeological surveys show evidence of organized abandonment at many sites with valuable materials systematically removed, and no signs of violent destruction or sudden evacuation. This pattern suggests coordinated community responses to environmental challenges rather than chaotic collapse. Natural disasters compounded challenges posed by gradual climate change, creating acute crises that severely tested the resilience of Harappan urban systems. Geological evidence indicates the Indus Valley experienced several major flooding episodes during the late mature Harappan period, possibly triggered by tectonic activity that temporarily dammed river channels and created massive upstream reservoirs. When these natural barriers failed, resulting floods would have been catastrophic, inundating cities and agricultural areas with unprecedented water volumes, carrying enormous sediment loads that fundamentally altered local topography. At Mohenjo-daro, archaeological evidence reveals multiple flooding episodes that progressively damaged urban infrastructure and forced major reconstruction efforts that strained community resources. The lowest excavated levels show normal Harappan urban planning with well-maintained streets, efficient drainage systems, and orderly residential areas. Higher levels reveal successive layers of flood silt interspersed with evidence of determined rebuilding activities. Residents raised street levels, reconstructed damaged buildings, and modified drainage systems to cope with changed topographic conditions created by massive sediment deposition, demonstrating remarkable resilience in the face of overwhelming environmental challenges. The layers of flood deposits at Mohenjo-daro provide compelling evidence for the scale and impact of natural disasters that repeatedly altered urban life in the Indus Valley. These distinctive fine-grained sediments, often reaching over a meter in thickness, point to long periods of inundation where vast portions of the city became uninhabitable. Within some of these flood layers, archaeologists have identified both human and animal skeletons, revealing that certain floods struck with sufficient speed and intensity to trap residents and livestock unexpectedly. However, the relatively small number of casualties suggests that floods typically gave warning, affording enough time for most inhabitants to evacuate before the worst hit. Beyond flooding, seismic activity posed another persistent danger to Harappan settlements. Situated on the tectonically unstable boundary between the Indian and Eurasian plates, the region has long suffered from earthquakes capable of wreaking havoc on the brick and stone structures that dominated mature Harappan urban architecture. Across multiple sites, damage patterns are entirely consistent with seismic activity, collapsed walls, displaced foundations, and evidence of repeated structural repairs that point to earthquake events and the subsequent reconstruction efforts that followed. At Tolavera, detailed excavation of the monumental water management systems has revealed major failures in massive stone walls and reservoirs which were then rebuilt or modified, often with new construction techniques that reflect both responses to earthquake damage and adaptation to evolving hydrological challenges. The willingness and ability of Harappan communities to repair, modify, and expand central infrastructure in the aftermath of disasters illustrates a culture deeply committed to problem-solving and urban resilience. Water management systems, for example, underwent continuous changes as cities responded to shifting environmental pressures. At Dhulavira, the original reservoir complexes were steadily expanded, with additional tanks and catchment structures added to trap and store increasingly scarce rainfall. Every aspect of these water systems, from the placement and size of reservoirs to the sophistication of sluices and spillways, embodies Harappan ingenuity in using available technology and engineering insights to overcome environmental adversity. Agricultural adaptation offers another window into the civilization's flexible response to new constraints. Archaeobotanical studies from later Harappan settlements reveal a pattern of changing crop selection. Drought-resistant varieties such as millets and sorghum gradually replaced the wheat and barley prevalent in earlier times, a shift that was likely crucial for maintaining food productivity as reliable monsoon rains dwindled. Evidence points to more targeted cultivation efforts and a willingness to revise traditional farming practices, efforts that sustained large populations even as the climate became less favorable. As old heartlands suffered increasing ecological stress, settlement patterns shifted as well. Archaeological surveys show a marked movement of population toward regions previously considered marginal. Areas with more dependable water sources, or better suited for coping with the new climate regime, such as the Gujarat coast, saw growing density of habitation as communities relocated from the arid core of the valley. These new coastal settlements managed to preserve Harappan cultural traditions, including architectural styles, craft production, and social organizations, while also adapting creatively to maritime environments and fresh economic opportunities. Trade networks evolved in parallel with these geographic and demographic changes. Inland production centers that could no longer rely on adequate water and agricultural output became less central to the Harappan economy, while coastal hubs and alternative trade routes gained new significance. Merchants responded by shifting the focus of commerce. Local agriculture waned as a trade commodity, but manufactured goods and raw materials from more diverse sources increased in importance. The civilization's emphasis on standardized production meant that crafts and industries could continue even as locations changed, keeping commercial ties alive and supporting widespread exchange despite regional environmental setbacks. The technological innovations developed during this time are striking. Well construction techniques grew more advanced, with greater depth and new waterproofing measures designed to maximize access to shrinking groundwater reserves. Rainwater harvesting systems emerged, capturing precipitation from rooftops and paved courtyards to supplement the failing wells and reservoirs. Plowing, soil management, and crop rotation practices improved, ensuring that nutrition and yields remained viable wherever productive land persisted. Irrigation systems began to exploit marginal lands formerly considered too dry, and improved storage facilities minimized losses from unpredictable harvests. In parallel with these agricultural and infrastructural changes, urban planning in later Harappan settlements adapted to meet new environmental realities. Compact city layouts reduced the burden on water supply and drainage infrastructure, while preserving core services and amenities. Drainage systems received significant upgrades redesigned to balance the challenge of both water scarcity and sudden intense floods. Houses incorporated features to shield residents from harsh weather, yet continued to reflect the privacy, durability, and aesthetic sensibilities typical of Harappan domestic architecture. Demographic shifts paint a complex picture of disease, migration, and continuity. Populations gradually left the stricken urban heartlands in favor of emerging new regions, but this redistribution unfolded over centuries, not abruptly. Archaeological evidence makes clear that cultural identity and technological sophistication survived these transitions, with communities retaining the core practices and symbolic traditions of their ancestors, even as environmental pressures dictated new modes of living. Regional diversity, both in impacts and responses, fostered a patchwork of continuity and transformation. Reliable river corridors and prosperous coastal settlements continued much as before, maintaining their urban scale and complexity. In contrast, more severely affected zones experienced definitive changes in social organization, economic focus, and even daily life. This spectrum of adaptive responses prevented a uniform collapse, instead generating a gradual evolution of the civilization's character and structure. Most striking, perhaps, is the proof of continued technological transmission and cultural development, even amidst dire environmental stress. Communities invested in new techniques and shared knowledge, keeping craftsmanship, engineering, and administrative skills alive well after the heyday of the urban heartlands. Despite the enormous challenges posed by shifting climate, recurring disasters, and dwindling resources, the Harpans managed to preserve elements of their civilization's distinctive system and ethos, maintaining robust networks, complex technologies, and recognizable cultural identity throughout centuries of transformation and adaptation. This remarkable adaptive capacity would prove fundamental to the civilization's enduring influence on subsequent cultural developments throughout South Asia, even as environmental pressures and changing circumstances reshaped the foundations of Harappan society. Despite centuries of successful adaptation to environmental challenges, the sophisticated systems that had sustained urban civilization ultimately proved insufficient to prevent the fundamental transformation that began around 1900 BC. Archaeological evidence from across the Indus Valley reveals a gradual but unmistakable shift from the complex urban centers that had defined mature Harappan civilization towards smaller, less elaborate settlements that retained traditional elements, while incorporating significant innovations reflecting new realities and opportunities. This transformation unfolded unevenly across the vast Harappan territory, creating an intricate mosaic of continuity and change that defies simple narratives of civilizational collapse or sudden abandonment. The complexity of this transition demonstrates that rather than experiencing uniform decline, different regions responded to environmental and social pressures through diverse adaptive strategies that preserved essential cultural elements while embracing necessary modifications. At Harappa itself, the archaeological sequence provides the clearest evidence for urban decline during the late Harappan period. The uppermost excavation levels reveal dramatic changes in settlement organization, with carefully planned street grids of the mature period giving way to more haphazard construction patterns that suggest weakened central planning authority. Houses built during this phase frequently reused bricks from earlier structures, indicating either resource scarcity or the breakdown of centralized building material production systems that had maintained quality standards for centuries. The sophisticated drainage networks that had been meticulously maintained throughout the mature period began failing, with blocked channels filled with debris and new construction built directly over former drainage lines, compromising urban sanitation and water management. The population of Harappa appears to have contracted significantly during this transitional period, with large sections of the former city showing clear evidence of abandonment rather than continued occupation. The massive defensive walls that had enclosed the mature Harappan settlement were breached in multiple locations, not through military assault but through gradual decay and systematic stone robbing by later inhabitants seeking building materials. Archaeological deposits from this period contain significantly fewer standardized artifacts, suggesting the breakdown of quality control systems that had maintained consistent production standards across the civilization's extensive manufacturing networks. However, the transformation at Harappa was not simply decline and abandonment. Late Harappan levels contain evidence of new cultural elements that had not appeared in earlier periods, including different pottery styles, modified burial practices, and architectural innovations that suggest cultural contact with populations from outside the traditional Harappan sphere. These new elements were integrated with surviving Harappan traditions, creating hybrid cultural forms that maintained continuity with the past, while adapting to changed circumstances and external influences. Mohenjo-daro experienced a somewhat different trajectory of transformation, with evidence suggesting more rapid abandonment of the major urban centre combined with continued occupation of peripheral areas. The Great Bath, which had served as a focal point for community activities throughout the mature period, shows evidence of neglect and eventual abandonment, with the sophisticated water management systems that had maintained the facility falling into disrepair. The surrounding residential areas reveal patterns of gradual depopulation, with houses abandoned in sequence rather than through sudden evacuation, suggesting organized relocation rather than catastrophic collapse. The final occupation levels at Mohenjo-daro contain artifacts representing significant departures from traditional Harappan material culture. Pottery from these levels shows cruder manufacturing techniques, with hand-formed vessels replacing the precisely wheel-thrown ceramics that had characterized earlier periods. The standardized brick construction that had defined Harappan architecture was replaced by more expedient building techniques, using whatever materials were readily available, including stones robbed from earlier structures and mud brick construction, requiring less technical expertise than the sophisticated fired brick systems of the mature period. Archaeological evidence from the Mohenjo-daro area suggests that abandonment of the major urban centre was accompanied by establishment of smaller settlements in the surrounding region. These new communities maintained some Harappan cultural elements while developing distinct local characteristics, reflecting adaptation to changed environmental and social conditions. Pottery from these settlements combines traditional Harappan forms with new shapes and decorative techniques, suggesting cultural innovation rather than simple decline or deterioration. Transformation patterns varied significantly across different regions of the former Harappan territory, creating a complex geographical mosaic of cultural change that reflected local conditions and adaptive strategies. In Gujarat, major urban centres like Dholavira and Lothal experienced gradual decline, but many smaller settlements continued flourishing and even expanded during the late Harappan period. These communities maintained sophisticated water management systems and continued engaging in long-distance trade, though the scale and standardization of these activities decreased compared to the mature Harappan period. The coastal settlements of Gujarat showed particular resilience during this transitional period, with communities adapting their economic focus toward marine resources and coastal trade networks that offered new opportunities for prosperity. Archaeological excavations at sites like Rangpur and Rodji reveal continued occupation through the late Harappan period, with material culture combining traditional elements with new innovations. These communities developed distinctive pottery styles, incorporating both Harappan traditions and external influences, creating regional variants that maintained cultural continuity while adapting to changing conditions and opportunities. The Punjab region, which had been central to mature Harappan civilization, experienced more dramatic transformation during the late Harappan period. Many major urban centres were abandoned or significantly reduced in size, while new settlements appeared in locations that had not been important during the mature period. These new communities often featured different settlement organisation patterns, with less emphasis on rigid urban planning and more flexible arrangements that could adapt to local conditions and resource availability. Archaeological surveys in the Punjab region have identified numerous late Harappan sites, showing evidence of cultural continuity combined with significant innovation. Pottery from these sites maintains some traditional Harappan forms while incorporating new shapes and decorative techniques, suggesting contact with populations from northern hills and western regions. Burial practices at these sites show modifications from traditional Harappan customs, with some communities adopting extended burial positions and different grave good assemblages reflecting changing religious beliefs or social organization. The Cholistan Desert region, which had supported numerous settlements during the mature Harappan period, when the Gagga-Hakra river system provided reliable water sources, experienced the most dramatic transformation as environmental conditions deteriorated. Archaeological surveys reveal that most settlements in this region were abandoned during the late Harappan period, with populations apparently relocating to areas with more reliable water sources and better survival prospects. However, some communities in the Cholistan region adapted to changing conditions by modifying their subsistence strategies and settlement patterns rather than abandoning their territories entirely. The few late Harappan sites identified in this region show evidence of communities that had adapted to increasingly arid conditions through innovative water conservation techniques and modified agricultural practices that enabled survival in harsher environments. These adaptations included development of more efficient irrigation systems, adoption of drought-resistant crops, and modification of settlement layouts to minimize water requirements while maintaining essential services. Such innovations demonstrate the continued ingenuity and problem-solving capabilities of Harappan communities, even as they faced unprecedented environmental challenges that forced fundamental changes in their way of life. The archaeological evidence from across the former Harappan territory reveals that rather than experiencing uniform collapse, the civilization underwent a complex process of cultural transformation that preserved essential elements while adapting to new realities. This transformation laid foundations for subsequent cultural developments in South Asia, ensuring that Harappan innovations and traditions continued influencing regional cultures long after the urban centers had declined. These later settlements, which emerged in place of mature Harappan cities, were notably smaller in scale and adapted their architectural designs to cope with limited resources and a changing environment. While basic elements of Harappan tradition such as brickwork, pottery styles, and certain domestic layouts remained evident, communities actively introduced new social organizations and technologies suited to new realities. This period saw intense local innovation as well as increased interactions with outside populations, resulting in material cultures that combined familiar forms with entirely new influences. Regional variations were pronounced, reflecting both environmental adaptation and multifaceted cultural contact. In the northern reaches of former Harappan lands, late-period pottery reveals influence from hill societies pressing southward. These new groups, themselves affected by climate fluctuations, contributed vessel shapes, decorative treatments, and manufacturing approaches that blended with enduring Harappan styles. In the western regions, evidence points to connections with groups from Balochistan and the Iranian plateau. Here, late Harappan sites yield copper and bronze objects shaped using unfamiliar methods and adorned with motifs not seen in mature Harappan contexts, signs either of migrating populations or expanded trade. Contact with outsiders generally did not erase Harappan tradition. Instead, regional variants emerged, distinctive blends of new and old, with local innovations layered atop respected customs, creating a patchwork of cultures across the changing valley. In eastern zones, especially along the former Gagga-Hakra River, continuity remained unusually strong. Despite environmental decline, settlements here maintained classic town layouts and inherited material culture, though the scale of enterprise was generally reduced. These sites provide essential evidence for cultural persistence in the face of adversity, showing that aspects of Harappan civilization endured despite crumbling urban frameworks. Theories about the causes of Harappan transformation have changed dramatically as evidence and methods improved. Early explanations leaned heavily on catastrophe, including theories of violent foreign invasion, abrupt natural disasters, or rapid climate collapse. Many believed skeletal remains uncovered at sites like Mohenjo-daro proved mass slaughter, yet more recent analysis shows those deaths likely resulted from normal causes, not conflict. The popular Aryan invasion hypothesis imagined nomadic Indo-European speakers overrunning and destroying the cities, supposedly accounting for the disappearance of urban Harappan life and disjunction with later cultures. This view was supported by apparent lack of fortifications and perceived discontinuity with subsequent South Asian societies. However, accumulating archaeological evidence does not support violent destruction at Harappan sites. Instead, careful analysis uncovers numerous elements of continuity bridging Harappan and post-Harappan developments, technological, cultural, and possibly even linguistic. Most notably, there is a marked absence of fortification damage or signs of warfare at major sites, and many settlements show gradual, organized abandonment rather than sudden collapse. Environmental degradation explanations have steadily gained ground, buttressed by paleoclimatic research. Evidence from marine and lake sediments, combined with archaeological studies of changing water management, strongly suggests dramatic shifts in monsoon rainfall, increasing aridity, and major alterations of river systems during the late Harappan period. These environmental changes would have steadily undermined intensive agricultural production and the support of dense urban populations. Changes were not simultaneous everywhere, explaining why some cities declined sharply while others persisted or even flourished for a time. Water management, crop choices, and settlement patterns all reflect nuanced region-specific adaptations. Yet, environmental factors, while central, do not fully account for the complexity of Harappan transformation. Internal collapse theories propose that the civilization's intricate systems of administration and social coordination broke down as pressures, both from within and beyond, outstripped communities' adaptive capacities. These perspectives highlight the lack of rigid social hierarchy in Harappan society, arguing that the more consensus-based structures were susceptible to disruption when faced with simultaneous environmental, economic, and social upheavals. Evidence supporting such theories includes breakdowns in the standardized artifact systems, decline of weight and measure uniformity, and the loss of systematic urban planning, all consistent with weakening administrative and organizational order. Economic disruption played a major role too. The collapse of broad trade networks caused by unstable climate, changing politics, and increasingly unreliable transportation undercut prosperity and eroded the surpluses that had fed specialized crafts and urban growth. As central trade routes faltered, the flow of exotic materials like lapis lazuli and marine shells diminished. Craft traditions became less consistent, and communities shifted toward local economies and reduced specialization. Signs of changing trade also appear in the archaeological record, with some sites showing ongoing exchange and production even as larger cities shrank or disappeared. What is clear from the archaeological record is that decline and transformation were not uniform. Many late Harappan sites exhibit a mix of traditional and innovative features. Pottery and architecture bear the unmistakable stamp of Harappan techniques, yet display new forms and decoration reflecting local inventions or external contact. Continuity persisted even under duress, evidencing a cultural evolution rather than a complete break or replacement. Technology, settlement patterns, and even possible linguistic links suggest ongoing lines of influence connecting late Harappan cultures to subsequent South Asian civilizations. The nature and implications of these connections remain active, topics of research and debate. Recent discoveries point toward multiple channels of transmission, ranging from technological know-how and city planning principles to religious and artistic traditions. Communities persisted and adapted, passing on essential elements that would shape the character and trajectory of later societies across northern India, Pakistan, and beyond. The enduring impact of Harappan civilization is thus most evident in its ability to negotiate change, survive adversity, and plant the seeds of new tradition, even as the ancient cities gave way to new and different worlds. Technological continuities linking Harappan civilization with later South Asian cultures are vividly evident in water management, agriculture, crafts, and more, showing that the sophisticated knowledge developed in the Indus Valley did not vanish when urban centers declined, but persisted in reworked forms that shaped the region's future. The unique mastery of hydraulic engineering, so apparent in the sprawling streets and drainage systems of Harappan cities, became a foundation for future urban growth. Long after cities like Mohenjo-daro and Harappa faded, their methods echoed in the planning and infrastructure of settlements across the subcontinent. The principles behind Harappan water management survived through generations. Later cities, from Taxila to Pataliputra, and sites in Gujarat displayed drainage layouts, storage techniques, and municipal sanitation directly inspired by Indus Valley practices. While these systems were often scaled down or built with different materials, the essential knowledge, such as accurate gradients, reliable brick channels, and rainwater collection, remained. The standardized measurement systems that once coordinated Harappan construction, trade, and crafts also left a long legacy. The binary and decimal weight sequences invented by Harappan merchants informed commercial practice for centuries, with archaeological analyses showing direct proportional continuities between Indus Valley weights and those used in subsequent South Asian markets. Urban planning, another Harappan hallmark, radiated influence far beyond its original cities. The grid patterns pioneered in Harappan settlements established a precedent for organized, integrated urban design. Later towns across northern India and Pakistan showed similar approaches, arranging streets, houses, and public spaces in systematically planned frameworks that owed much to the architectural logic of their Indus Valley forebears. These layouts supported more efficient commerce, administration, and public health, a model that endured as city populations grew and new centers emerged. Craft production methods also reveal enduring technological threads. Harpan bead makers honed precision drilling and shaping techniques that became models for jewelry traditions maintained through the centuries. Artisan knowledge survived in communities that tirelessly passed down skills, connecting ancient expertise with evolving styles and materials. Metallurgical techniques like the lost wax casting used for bronze artifacts laid the groundwork for later advances in South Asian metalwork, supporting craft industries that flourished even as urban centers waned. Perhaps most enduring in everyday life were the cotton cultivation and textile techniques first mastered by Harappan farmers and weavers. Archaeology demonstrates that crop rotation, sophisticated irrigation, and soil management methods developed in the Indus Valley continued to underpin farming throughout the northwest subcontinent for millennia. Cotton, a Harappan innovation, remained foundational and eventually drove South Asian textiles onto the global stage, providing economic sustenance and shaping cultural identity. Harappan farmers pioneered integrated systems combining wheat, barley, legumes, and cotton, diversifying production to increase food security and support population growth, a lesson carried forward across ages. Animal domestication, especially of water buffalo, provides another link. The techniques for managing, breeding, and utilizing these animals originated in the Harappan period and remained central to South Asian agriculture, helping communities adapt to shifting environments and sustain productivity. These practical traditions outlasted political systems, becoming part of daily existence for countless future farmers. Religious and ritual practices from Harappan times appear to have influenced later South Asian spiritual traditions. While the lack of deciphered texts makes direct connections difficult, material evidence is suggestive. Ritual bathing in Harappan sites finds echoes in the purification rites that characterize Hindu practice. Fire altars, offering vessels, and ceremonial spaces hint at traditions of fire worship and sacrifice that re-emerged in Vedic culture. Terracotta figurines and images of mother goddesses from Harappan settlements point towards enduring motifs of fertility and feminine divinity, themes that became central to goddess worship in later periods. Animal symbolism, so prevalent in Harappan religious art, likely informed beliefs about animal power and sacredness, setting the stage for South Asia's vibrant traditions of animal worship and symbolic representation. Scenes of bulls, elephants, and mythical creatures carved onto Harappan seals foreshadow the rich spectrum of animal imagery seen in later South Asian temples, texts, and folklore. Municipal sanitation practices developed by Harappan engineers established benchmarks for public health measures in urban South Asia. The systematic management of waste and water set standards that informed civic policy and infrastructure for generations. In cities where public hygiene was recognized as essential, Harappan approaches like covered sewers, waste removal, and water storage became models for municipal organization. The persistent legacy of Harappan civilization is thus rooted not in colossal ruins or ancient written records, but in systems, technologies, and practices that adapted and survived, woven into the daily fabric of South Asian life. As the last recognizably Harappan settlements shifted into new cultural forms around 1300 BC, the innovations of the Indus Valley continue to inform and shape the region's history. Archaeologists and historians are only beginning to understand the depth of these connections. From city plans and irrigation ditches to jewelry workshops and textile looms, The Indus Valley's legacy endures, quiet but profound in every corner of the subcontinent. The practical ingenuity, adaptive spirit, and collaborative traditions first forged in the Harappan era became blueprints for the civilizations that followed, shaping South Asia's unique path as a nexus of innovation, resilience, and enduring cultural vitality. The integration of private household sanitation with extensive municipal infrastructure stands as one of the many forward-thinking achievements of the Harappan civilization, a hallmark of pragmatic design that balanced community health with individual comfort. Rather than relying solely on communal wells or shared latrines, Harappan cities connected each house through a network of drains and waste channels, which fed into overarching sewer systems running beneath carefully planned streets. This integration provided a blueprint, influencing both ancient and modern approaches to urban infrastructure, and linking personal routines to public well-being. As the mature phase of Harappan civilization transitioned to later cultural forms, these technological foundations were inherited, adapted, and transformed by emerging regional traditions. In Gujarat, for example, late Harappan communities not only maintained aspects of drainage and urban hygiene, but also leveraged enduring maritime connections and long-established craft skills. These technical and commercial traditions bolstered Gujarat's reputation as a hub of Indian Ocean trade for centuries after urban Harappa declined. The systems of coastal commerce, navigation, and artisanal production first refined in the late Harappan era became central to the region's prosperity, shaping exchanges that reached East Africa, Arabia, and Southeast Asia, and providing models for merchant networks that flourished in historic periods. In Punjab, continuity with Harappan agricultural and manufacturing practices contributed heavily to the development of later civilizations, including the Mauryan and Gupta empires. The agrarian techniques, knowledge of crop rotation and irrigation systems honed by Harappan farmers, allowed their successors to intensify land use, manage water with unprecedented accuracy, and support growing populations. Harappan animal husbandry, particularly the domestication and management of water buffalo and other livestock, provided a durable base for food production in an often unpredictable climate. Communities integrated these Harappan innovations into larger political structures while maintaining distinctive regional traditions, a process of adaptation, assimilation, and innovation that defined the evolution of South Asian civilization. The modern rediscovery of Harappan civilization began unceremoniously in the mid-19th century, as British engineers built the East Indian Railway across Punjab. Workers quarrying for track ballast found bricks of peculiar shape and consistency, unlike anything local kilns could produce. These bricks turned out to be remnants of an ancient settlement at Harappa, an advanced city buried and forgotten for millennia. Recognizing the significance of these finds, Alexander Cunningham, the first Director General of the Archaeological Survey of India, made preliminary investigations in the early 1870s. His limited excavations recovered numerous artifacts, including seals carved with mysterious symbols and elegant pottery. Cunningham's reports described Harappa as representing a lost civilization, one that predated known South Asian traditions. It was only in the early 20th century that systematic exploration of Harappan sites began under the direction of Sir John Marshall. Between 1902 and 1928, Marshall led ambitious projects at Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, employing modern archaeological methods such as stratification and context-based digging. His teams uncovered monuments with sunken baths, extensive street grids, and drainage systems that astonished both scholars and the public. The order and scale of these urban centers disrupted established views of South Asian history, revealing that urban civilization had thrived in the Indus Valley thousands of years before the Mauryan Empire or the rise of the great cities of the Ganges Plain. Marshall's discoveries included the Great Bath of Mohenjo-daro, vast residential neighborhoods, and a wealth of standardized brick buildings. He documented how Harappan cities balanced aesthetics, sanitation, and functionality, setting precedents for urbanism that later societies would echo. The publication of Marshall's work brought Harappan civilization to the attention of the Global Academy, establishing it alongside Egypt and Mesopotamia as a cradle of early urban life and technical ingenuity. In the 1940s, Mortimer Wheeler's excavations at Harappa added depth to this picture. Wheeler introduced rigorous methodologies, focusing on the strategic placement and use of city walls, gateways, and artifact layers to better understand the social and chronological evolution of the civilization. His work affirmed the defensive genius and urban sophistication of Harappan towns, highlighting systematic planning and chronological sequencing of urban growth. Wheeler's initial interpretation of well-preserved skeletons at Mohenjo-daro supported theories of violent destruction, possibly by foreign invaders. However, these notions were softened as later forensic studies determined the deaths were most likely natural, not evidence of massacre. After independence, South Asian archaeologists radically expanded knowledge of Harappan civilization. In both India and Pakistan, research teams surveyed new regions and excavated previously unexplored sites, finding hundreds of settlements that covered far more territory than previously recognized. Excavations at places like Kalibangan, Lothal, and Dholavira showed that sophisticated water management, varied urban layouts, and adaptive architecture had been common across the civilization. R.S. Bisht's 1967 discovery of Dholavira and its water reservoirs in the arid zone of Gujarat demonstrated that Indus urban technical systems were highly adaptable, designed for different climates and soil types. Extensive surveys conducted since the 1960s have now mapped over 1,400 Harappan sites, from the Punjab and Sindh to Rajasthan and Gujarat. Satellite imagery and remote sensing, particularly over the Kholistan Desert and the ancient Ghaggar-Hakra river system, have revealed more settlement locations, old watercourses, and landscape changes invisible from the ground. These technological advances helped archaeologists reconstruct patterns of trade, administration, and even environmental change, showing how settlement hierarchies shifted and how communities specialized in different crafts and trades across the region. Systematic dating techniques revolutionized the study of Harappan development. Radiocarbon, thermoluminescence, and archaeomagnetic dating allowed dense and reliable chronologies to be established. Scholars confirmed that Harappan civilization originated around 3,300 BC, peaked between 2600 and 1900 BC, and gradually transformed by 1300 BC. This chronology enabled comparative analysis, exposing degrees and patterns of cultural change, adaptation, and decline, and showing how climate, trade, and innovation intersected over time. Modern research has thus painted the Harappan civilization not as a monolithic or static culture, but as a constantly evolving, resourceful society. Excavations and analysis demonstrate how Harappan engineering knowledge, from drain design to standardized brickwork, shaped later town planning, not only in the Indus region but throughout South Asia. Municipal principles, building techniques, and approaches to communal resource management persisted even as city sizes shrank and political orders changed. Tradition and innovation walked hand in hand, carrying practical knowledge through centuries of change and into the collective identity of the subcontinent. After the initial discoveries, further research revealed the influence of Harappan technologies and practices on subsequent societies. Maritime traditions seeded the rise of later oceanic trade empires in Western India, while agrarian and hydraulic techniques supported the expansion of powerful regional polities. Cultural and religious motifs visible in Harappan artifacts, such as animal symbols, mother goddess figurines, and ritualistic baths, recur when the art, folklore, and spiritual practices of later historic periods. Even aspects of language, trade weights, and administrative systems show signs of continuity, although debate endures about the specifics of these transitions. The importance of regional adaptation is evident in late Harappan Gujarat, where communities modified water management and trading routines to fit both environmental change and new commercial opportunities. These forms of resilience and ingenuity enabled societies to thrive in challenging circumstances, passing down knowledge and organizational strategies that would be harnessed and redeveloped by future groups. In summary, the Harappan legacy lives not in the grandeur of ancient ruins or the decipherment of lost writing, but through centuries of practical wisdom and resourceful adaptation. From sanitation to metallurgy, city planning to craft specialization, every element of Harappan life contributed to a long arc of influence, shaping communities throughout South Asia and setting standards that endure across time. The civilization's story is one of ingenuity, transformation, and enduring relevance, as its ideas ripple through history and animate the life of a continent. The development of non-invasive archaeological methods such as ground-penetrating radar and magnetometry has revolutionized research at major Harappan sites. These innovative techniques enable researchers to detect subsurface features, buried buildings, street networks, and waterworks without damaging fragile deposits. The resulting data offers comprehensive views of ancient city planning and construction practices, making it possible to study urban layouts in detail while preserving them for future generations. These technologies are particularly valuable for mapping the vast complexity beneath Harappan mounds and for reconstructing city organization in its original form. DNA analysis of skeletal remains has provided exciting but challenging glimpses into the population structure. Although South Asian climates often limit the preservation of organic material, recent breakthroughs in genetic analysis suggest the Harappans were highly diverse, showing affinities with both indigenous South Asian and Central Asian populations. These dynamics point toward the region as a hub of ancient migration and cultural exchange, with genetic markers tracking the complex multi-ethnic ancestry that characterizes South Asia's population even today. Climate reconstruction techniques, including paleoclimatology, sediment analysis, and pollen sampling, have produced detailed records of environmental conditions during key Harappan periods. These studies confirm that substantial climate change struck the region during its later phase. Monsoon rains weakened, aridity grew, and water management systems were increasingly stressed. The resulting data supports theories that link Harappan transformation to environmental changes, while also revealing that these impacts varied across different regions. Some communities adapted effectively, while others faced abandonment or dramatic shifts in subsistence and organization. The ongoing attempt to decipher the Harappan or Indus script remains a focal challenge for historians, archaeologists, and linguists. Despite decades of effort, the script's true content remains hidden. Yet computational and statistical tools have begun to tease out patterns. Computer-assisted analyses reveal that symbol usage and sequence structure exhibits regularities characteristic of a writing system. Machine learning has been applied to identify grammatical features and compare Indus signs with scripts from other civilizations. Nonetheless, the brevity and context-specific use of inscriptions restricts progress until a bilingual inscription or a substantial text is found. Much remains unsettled. International collaboration has become essential in Harappan studies. Scholars from around the globe, India, Pakistan, Europe, North America, Central Asia, pool expertise in archaeology, linguistics, computational science, and environmental research to address daunting questions about the civilization's origins, lifeways, and decline. These joint efforts allow for interdisciplinary approaches and data sharing, enhancing the assembly and analysis of knowledge. Such collaborations have accelerated advances in understanding Harappan society, cementing its place as a pivotal point in world history studies. The modern significance of Harappan civilization extends beyond academic circles into questions of cultural heritage, identity, and preservation. Harappan sites are sources of immense pride in both India and Pakistan, celebrated as symbols of ancient achievement and ingenuity. The technical savvy and sustainable city planning seen in Harappan settlements provide instructive models for modern development, especially as contemporary societies seek answers to environmental and urban challenges. However, this heritage faces many threats. Environmental degradation, encroaching urbanization, and limited funding undermine efforts to preserve the ancient sites. The monumental ruins at Mohenjo-daro and Harappa are particularly vulnerable. Salt crystals from groundwater threaten brickwork, structural shifts cause walls to collapse, and pollution damages exposed surfaces. Conservation requires ongoing work, often supported by organizations such as UNESCO, though available resources struggle to match the scale of need. To address these challenges, preservationists have developed educational programs and outreach initiatives that build awareness of Harappan history among the public. Museums in India, Pakistan, and abroad display thousands of artifacts, while dedicated site museums at places like Lothal and Dhulavira help visitors appreciate the ingenuity of ancient builders. Exhibits focus on urban planning, craft production, and sanitation systems, connecting the material past to present-day visitors. These educational efforts align with conservation strategies, leveraging appreciation and support to help protect vulnerable archaeological treasures. As new discoveries are made and archaeological techniques advance, the study of Harappan civilization continually evolves. Unexplored sites are mapped and excavated, Obscure objects are reanalyzed, and scientific methods from genetics to climate science uncover new layers of meaning. Each decade brings fresh insights into the complexity of Harappan urbanism, technological prowess, and social organization. The Harappan legacy reverberates across South Asia's subsequent history, providing frameworks for city building, environmental management, and artisan production. Its influence reaches into modern times as societies reconsider issues like urban hygiene, adaptive infrastructure, and resilient trade. As a model of early urban innovation, the Indus Valley Civilization stands as testament to human creativity and adaptation. The civilization's rediscovery and ongoing scholarly engagement continue to deepen our understanding of how complex societies rise, flourish, and transform, leaving indelible marks on the cultures and landscapes that follow. Harappan civilization, then, is more than an archaeological puzzle. It is an enduring source of inspiration. Its lessons on systematic planning, quality control, civic hygiene, and social adaptation offer valuable guidance for contemporary urban management and sustainable development. The civilization's success in crafting resilient systems over millennia serves as a powerful reminder that the solutions of the past may illuminate the way forward for societies facing new challenges today.